Hey everyone. Welcome back for the second part of What If Naruto Was SS rank and leader of Dark Country. As always, huge thanks to all of my Patreons. Making these videos would be impossible without you guys' support, especially with all the restrictions YouTube places on my type of content. As always, the full story is already out over there for you guys along with about 30 other different stories you can enjoy. Also feel free to send me any messages over there if you have any questions or even if you just want to chat. Link to all of that will be in the description. Anyways, everyone, enjoy the video. Chapter 7. Hiden Art, Smoke Release, Smoke Demon Possession Clone Jutsu. The world changed around them. He was on his feet in a field of burnt black earth and burning, festering vegetation. The sky was light gray and the moon was pitch black. Wispy white clouds floated before the dark moon, casting ominous light down onto what the one-eyed warmonger could only guess was a field in the underworld. The demonic world shifted and Naruto warped before him, standing 3 feet away from him. The leader's cerulean eyes glowed darkly. The ghost had no skin on his lower jaw. It looked like the skin there, and the skin just under his nose, shrunk and dried up, revealing a horrifying set of wide, serrated, pearly white teeth that seemed to be permanently grinning, curved up at the edges. The shark-like teeth of the dark leader creaked as he laughed lowly in a demonically deep voice, opening and closing in ways that could have killed any other man's. Choking black smoke billowed from and around Naruto's gnarly maw. Danzo felt dread. For the third time in his whole life, he felt the painful, soul-churning heaviness grow deep down in the pit of his stomach, blocking air from entering his lungs and rendering his limbs unable to move. 2 of those times were caused by the same man or beast that stood before him. He didn't know when he had crumpled down onto his knees and he was staring straight up at the terror-inducing assassin, looking into the killer's demented, merciless blue eyes as the orbs darkened and Naruto grabbed Danzo by his neck, forcing the older man's head further back. Then Naruto's jaws creaked open and he roared. Smoke surged out from Naruto's chilling maw, bathing the one-eyed war hawk and pouring all over the man's body, curling over his face and over his body. Some wisps of smoke seeped into Danzo's mouth and more followed, tunneling through his throat and spreading into both of his lungs. The smoke that hadn't entered Danzo's mouth and nose, slithered over his body, sinking into his pores and fastening into each and every cell in his body. The smoke stopped pouring from the ghost's mouth and the assassin stared down at the older man, who was looking back up at him with gaping mouth and wide, horrified brown eyes. Black bled into Danzo's eyes and Naruto chuckled demonically. I almost feel sorry for you, Danzo. Black blood ran down the corners of the downed man's eyes and his ears, and he began trembling, shaking vigorously as the fully went into effect. Naruto's had stayed firm around Danzo's neck and his evil blue eyes maintained eye contact through it all. This is a very painful way to die. Do you know why? The smoke billowing from Naruto's upper jaw, masking the nothing of his lower jaw. It takes quite some time before you are allowed to die. Strong wind began blowing and haunting screams whistled. You can hear your comrades now. The first thing to go was Danzo's chakra core. The smoke would soak through the 7 main tenketsu of the war hawk's body, breaking them down and piecing them back together, this time with it as its sole controller. It would rush to the heart and, at that point, Danzo would not be able to do anything. Not like he ever could in the first place. The smoke demon possession clone rushing through Danzo's body would gradually, clinically, soak through all of his muscles, dig into his organs and attack all of his cells, dominating his entire system. The smoke would travel into his head, creating deadly pockets of smoke and leaching into both sides of his brain, scorching and charring his brain cells and negating any brain activity altogether in Danzo's head with Naruto's powerful lightning release tripling the effect of his smoke. The lightning in Naruto's lightning water smoke would make the Danzo's brain shrivel up into a small stone, filling his head with the smoke so his shrunken brain would remain suspended and perpetually attacked. The smoke would slowly, carefully, hollow out Danzo's bones, oozing through them and drying up the blood and bone marrow. The bone itself would stay strong but it would be completely and utterly saturated by Naruto's smoke. The best way to describe using the jutsu was that Naruto was gently putting on a t-shirt and a pair of pants that, if he wore them too quickly, would tear into shreds. It was painful all the same. Well, for Danzo, it was excruciating. Human logic and understanding couldn't even begin to describe the universe of agony Danzo was in. Naruto laughed, this time calmer and yet no less saturated with evil intent. Danzo didn't know when he fell back into his chair, the table between them zoomed back in place and the weapons fell down from the sky, setting themselves back in their normal place. The black charred floor rippled and flipped over, changing into dark gray concrete. The walls of the interrogation room rose out from the ground and the roof slammed down on top. Naruto sat back heavily in his chair, staring at the possessed man across from the table, and his right hand moved up, grabbing onto his half-mask as it blazed along with his weapons. Danzo blinked frantically, his vision blurry, as the sound of his tormentor's mask clicking onto his face roused him from his daze. Naruto made sure his mask was in place as he said, "For the last 5 minutes I have you, Danzo, I want you to know something." The man leaned on his elbow, heavily, and perched his hand on his right palm, his eyes closed and curved up into a smile as he said, "Your precious Konoha would burn. Not now, and maybe not tomorrow, but someday. He tapped the man's forehead and this time Danzo only blinked again, groaning weakly and lightly swaying from side to side. "Will be a major player in its downfall." His head went back to his hand and he sniffed, exhaling with a quiet laugh. Everything in the improvised interrogation room went back to normal, the door warped out of the wall and finally the windows cast in the dim light of the stars. "You will slowly die, old man. With your age, I'll say it'll take you roughly 5 years before you can die for real. I personally haven't experienced what my demon clone can do, and heaven forbid I ever do, but I'm guessing that it feels like hell." "Hell, huh?" Understatement. Naruto flicked Danzo's forehead with his other hand. "Stay with me. I've still got 2 minutes. Scum. Now, calling me names won't change your fate." Naruto tutted. "This is gonna be your last conscious moment, Danzo. Do you really want to spend it hating?" He got no reply, only the man falling forward onto his face, thumping his forehead on the edge of the table. "Seems you want to sleep. I'm sorry, but sleep is the last thing you'll be getting." He didn't even sound apologetic. Naruto silently watched the man, counting down in his head. 1 minute, 30 seconds, 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 3 seconds. 2. 1. Danzo snapped back, his back straight and his head tilted down. He looked up sharply and Naruto, still lazily leaning his head on his open palm, simply gazing at the dying man. Danzo's eyes were coal black, even the whites of his eyes, and his face was devoid of emotions. "Is it 1 hour already?" Naruto yawned. The possession jutsu took a monumental amount of chakra from Naruto, and Naruto wasn't exactly lacking in the chakra store department. He had arguably the largest reserves in the country and he was just behind Nagato in the chakra store department in the upper ranks of the Akatsuki, back when he was in Ame. The smoke demon-possessed man nodded slowly and Naruto blinked. The risks of using the jutsu was worth the reward, in spite of the danger he was in from falling asleep, for his smoke demon clone could perfectly impersonate the victim for as long as the victim's main body was alive, constantly feeding and leaching from the dying or dead victim's chakra core and using said core as its own. The setback to this clone, besides the chakra drain, was that it couldn't simply read the memories of the dying or deceased. Still, the smoke clone was semi-independent, self-sustaining and partly sentient, much like the average blood clone. Also, like the blood clone, the sacrifice to create a single one was heavy. The blood clone needed several pints of the user's blood and the demon smoke clone needed a massive chunk of Naruto's reserves. The first time Naruto used the technique was on one of Hanzo's loyalists, using the man as a spy behind enemy ranks, collecting information and relaying it to him via letter. When the clone had been discovered, it had taken down as many other loyalists as possible before it was effectively felled himself. There was no backlash of memories and the only notification of foul play was the thick black fog that escaped the corpse. "Get to it." "Yes, boss." It got up and marched out of the room. "He can go," Naruto called. The clone felt a smirk crawl up its face as the leader's loyal subordinates surrounded it, convinced that it was the real deal and not a possession clone. Perfect. The first test had been passed. The clone-possessed man blazed to Konoha and Naruto rose off his chair, walking around the table with as much ease he could muster, covering how tired he was. Sure, he could take a chakra pill to rejuvenate himself, but there was definitely going to be a backlash when the temporary chakra increase depleted on its own. One way or the other, he was going to face the tiredness. It was best to do it and get it all over with. The leader waved for Suaki and the upper ranks in Dark Country's Defense Corps teams 1 to 5 to stand down. Onion worriedly stayed to the side. "Is there anything else we need to worry about?" He directed this question to the head of his defense corps, the Gato clan head. Makoto Gato was a man of average build with almost unassuming physical features, short, light brown hair, brown eyes and a healthy tan. He was wearing his clan and the country's colors of dark brown long-sleeved shirt and black pants and shinobi sandals. His forehead protector was shifted to face the right side and his black Jounin flak jacket had yellow straps crossing over his torso, from over each shoulder and intersecting in the middle. The man was in his late 50s and he had hardened eyes, deep burn marks on both of his hands. His last physical feature was a long white goatee going down his chin. He was a rabid cursor and his temper was one to be rivaled in the country, but he controlled himself in the midst of his leader. My subordinates are scouting out the immediate border for any more witnesses. So far nothing to report, sir, Makoto said. With all due respect, sir, what happened to the leaf shit scum rat? Naruto held up his and the man stopped. He'll be back in about 3 days and I want you to be the first person he meets. He'll give you some documents and I want you to pass it on to the black commander. He patted his student's shoulder familiarly. Rotate the border security every 2 hours for the next 2 weeks. I want fresh eyes on the ground at all times. After that we can go back to normal security rotation. He still saw the question in the clan head's eyes and, as he looked at the other Gato ninjas, he saw them too looking inquisitively. I possessed him. He waved for them to relax when they were about to exclaim. Don't worry about. I just need a nap. Allow us to escort you to the capital, sir, Makoto said sincerely. I don't want to disrupt your duties. The man didn't look convinced. Naruto swayed imperceptibly and his eyes were half-lidded. He leaned heavily on Suaki for support but no matter what he refused to pass out. It wouldn't look good if he did that in front of his ninjas. Makoto pulled out his walkie-talkie and was about to mutter in a string of codes to summon a level 5 protected carriage for their leader, the highest level of protection reserved for Naruto alone. But Suaki reached to him and pushed the device down. I've got this, Lord Makoto. Escort Onion back to Konoha. The man stood back and nodded, studying his superior with shaded hesitation. As you wish, Commander Ketsueki. His head jerked backwards and his subordinates melted into the ground as clay, leaving behind no trace of their presence. It wasn't that he didn't trust Suaki to look after their leader, after all he was among the majority that wanted her as Black Commander and she had been his longest and closest friend since before Naruto was Ghost and Suaki was Blood. His problem was that he still couldn't give her a proper position on the scale of power. General Bingo book entries on her placed her under A rank with strict orders to flee on sight, much like with Naruto. They all haven't seen her fight but her prowess on the battlefield followed her, like of her fights with Hanzo's ninjas. Her bloodline too gave her an air of mystery. They knew the gist of what she could do but not everything. What they did know was that her skills and her bloodline placed her dangerously close to her teacher in power. Compared to most of the bloodlines in the country, controlling her own blood and the blood of others, theirs came up short in several aspects. Suaki took after her teacher more than anyone wanted to give her credit. The air of mystery hovering about her came from her teacher. The Gato clan, and nearly half of the clans in the country, believe that anyone in a position of power has to actually have the power to keep the subordinates in line as well as to protect those that did not have the power. Naruto, the ghost, had proven his strength on multiple occasions before and after his arrival into the country. Outside of Dark Country, his name could only be said in hasty whispers. His legend was used to drive the fear of Kami into any unfortunate soul. No one had seen Suaki fight, they just knew that she was a formidable combatant. She went on mission with only 3 particular black operatives, her team was codenamed 11. The clan heads weren't privy to the identities of the members of 11 or of the missions they had gone on. The Shinobi and Civilian Council did know that Black had not stumbled in their mission success rate since her secret inauguration as its commander. The vampire was as secretive as her post required and she made sure this secrecy was maintained in all of Black. They trusted her leadership. Have a nice night, Lord Leader. Report to me tomorrow morning, Makoto. You'll come with Nanako Hogo clan head. And you too, Suaki, Naruto said, ambling with Suaki towards the capital and to their quaint, 2-bedroom house that would only serve as a temporary residence for Naruto until his tower was ready. Later. Oh. It's been a while since he last had this dream. Hanzo stood atop the head of his salamander chief summon, his arms crossed and looking down on the lone shinobi on the field of corpses and felled trees. The masked cage glared down at the masked assassin as rain pelted down mercilessly on both fighters. Naruto cracked his fists, lightly panting for air, meeting the old cage's eyes with electric blue orbs. Unhinged. Stubborn. 220 ninjas, gone. Dead. Scattered about haphazardly by the same man that was stopping Hanzo from capitalizing on Nagato's weakness and attacking the Rinnegan holder. The newly dubbed ghost didn't give the Amikage any chance. 4 hours and 30 minutes of fighting and only he, the cage, was left out of the army he had brought along. The older ninja broke the silence by clapping his hands. The sound echoed through the tense din of the rain, and thunder clapped above his head, rumbling through the sky in white bolts of energy. Naruto, wearing a beastly grinning mask that vaguely mirrored what would happen to his face soon after the catastrophic fight with Hanzo, exhaled slowly and leaned back lazily, his clear blue eyes churning silently. "I'll have to give it to you, young man, you are exactly what my ninjas say you are." The man stopped clapping and said in a deep voice, echoing far and wide in spite of the fact that he wasn't shouting. "A beast. Too bad I can't convince you to stop this nonsense." Naruto answered. "Rubbish you say. Do you call the execution of my ninjas nonsense? They were imposters." "They were my ninjas," Hanzo said strongly, glaring hatefully at the ghost of Ame. Naruto shrugged limply. "I don't know what to tell you, man. I'm shit tired, dude." The 17-year-old assassin then clapped his hands together and melded them into a dragon hand seal, shifting it into a snake, then a tiger, and finally back into the dragon seal. It was a short sequence of seals the cage could not recognize. Thought he still bent his knees in preparation for whatever was going to happen. The boy closed his eyes in concentration and whispered. Silent night. A hush ran through the battlefield. Naruto hunched forward and hot white lightning broke out of his back, forming spiny, skeletal wings with black smoke covering some of the lightning to form a leathery though warbling surface. The lightning and smoke wings flapped twice and Naruto bowed his head to the ground, falling into a crouch on the ground, resembling a demonic monster as his shredded Akatsuki robes bathed in black smoke, covering every inch of the robe perfectly and lacing itself in. His hair rose up and stood on end, crackling and fizzling with activity, until his blonde hair changed, erupting into white lightning. The teen opened his eyes and Hanzo smirked under his oxygen mask, seeing the harsh white energy surging violently through the boy's normally blue eyes. The thunderstorm restarted above their heads as the dark smoke seeped over Naruto's shoes and over his hands, leaving only his pale, masked face visible. "Are you a beast, or a ghost? I'm not sure anymore," Hanzo said to himself. The monster of lightning and smoke dug his fingers deep into the heat-scorched ground of the recently leveled forest and the ground cracked groaning under the weight of the immense chakra. Naruto flapped his demon wings again, then he spread them out, showing the lightning skeleton. The assassin exhaled black smoke from his nose. He looked up sharply. The chief salamander summon seemed unsettled as the tiny human leveled them with an even gaze, his pupilless white eyes electrifying the very air they were breathing. "Shut it. Wah." Hanzo got no chance to finish his retort, forced to cross his arms in front of his face as a savage knee appeared out of nowhere, ready to cleave off his head. He winced as white lightning arced over his body and he flipped off his salamander as black demon wings made to surround him. Flashing through hand seals and blowing out a volley of dark red fire, only to falter as the winged assassin phased out from sight and out of sensory detection. The cage landed on his feet, sliding back from a deadly slash from the demon wings, bent under a roundhouse kick but had to flip back from a rising knee to his chin. He barely got his eyes back up to the assassin but spat out a foul curse as Naruto's wings spread open again in all their terrifying glory. The black-bathed winged teen mutely tilted his head back and examined the man briefly. Pomph! A blade made completely out of bright white lightning found its way deep in his chest. Hanzo's eyes bugged out as blood pulsed out from his chest, then he exploded into white smoke, leaving behind the corpse of a dead Ame ninja. Naruto quietly stared and disappeared in a burst of smoke, reappearing back on top of the chief summons and engaging the also reappeared cage in a fierce hand-to-hand battle. Hanzo batted down two of Naruto's jabs and went in for a straight punch to the teen's gut, gaping as his fist harmlessly passed through the assassin and grunting as he rolled forward with the momentum of his blow, away from a kick to the back of his head that, again, would have left him without his head. Naruto followed up with an axe kick that bounced off the back of the summons, forcing him to bend backwards into a crab as the cage blasted a massive ball of fire at him. His feet nicked under the man's chin as he flipped back onto his feet, sliding under a roundhouse kick from the cage and rolling on his side from another ball of fire. The fight on the summon's back intensified. The back of the salamander became slippery but the summoner of the giant animal found no trouble combating. Naruto's wings flapped and swept aside a tornado of shuriken, cutting off the ninja wire that had aimed to trap him with lightning that broke the ninja stars to metal pieces. Naruto crossed his forearms and then pointed his fists at Hanzo. The metal pieces from the failed attempt hovered up from the slimy back of the salamander and whizzed to him when multiple blinks of light. The Amicage closed his eyes and allowed his rigidly muscular body to move on instinct, dodging each and every tiny fragment with the skill of a trained veteran. His fist rocketed forward, meeting a full-on bolt of lightning with a punch. Crack! He opened his eyes and shifted his head to the side back from an uppercut, swiping his feet to trip the assassin and cursing when he realized that Naruto's feet weren't even touching the ground but rather he was levitating on small white crackling lightning and moved around with the speed of light with his wings. Darkness swept over him and he blazed through some hand seals. Wind release, great breakthrough. He blew out the gale of wind from his mask, speeding forward as he did so. The smoke didn't let up but the muscular man slammed his shoulder into the solid black wall of smoke. He tried another jutsu as the wall of smoke quickly collapsed with him inside. Water release, salamander slime prison. The back of the salamander they were fighting on gave way and the cage felt the prison fall down into the gut of his chief summon. The chakra absorption thinned out the smoke and the man escaped from the open mouth of his summon animal. His feet fought to find purchase on the slippery ground, the gradually rain-soaked former forest, turning on his heel and blocking a knee to his chest with his forearms, pushing back and ducking a roundhouse kick. He grabbed the assassin's black ankles and yanked back, only for the teen to bring down his demonic wings on the cage. The man careened and bounced off the ground, skidding back first into a deep depression on the ground. The white lightning-haired, black smoke-clothed assassin phased out of detection once again as the man shook his head, fighting past the cobwebs in the head after the surprisingly blunt force of the leathery black wings, like being hit on the head with a giant war hammer. He shook his head again and blindly bashed his knee into a readily assembled defense of Naruto's wings bending inwards before their owner. The cage roared again as he was blasted back from the resounding lightning smoke combination. The man bounced on his back and got his feet back onto the ground, clawing the ground to stop his backwards movement and lunging back to the winged assassin, somehow finding more strength deep in his core. Naruto flapped his wings and blazed to the man, a gleaming silver tanto in his right hand. Knock knock. Naruto's eyes snapped open at the soft sound of knocking on his bedroom door. He looked to his right and checked his alarm clock. 2:13 a.m. flashed with green lights. He groaned and sat up, swinging his legs off his bed and settling them on the ground. An hour of sleep and he was fairly refreshed. He could even get some work done in the southern region of the country, signing off on a shipment of sweet potatoes and yams to Uzushio. The leader rubbed his eyes and blindly clicked on his half mask, rising off his feet and stretching, cracking his back and his shoulder wonderfully. Knock knock. The 24-year-old legend slinked to the door of his two-bedroom house and opened the door. On the other side of the door was his student. Suaki was in a large white vest he recognized as his own and dark gray shorts that stopped just short of her knees. She was barefoot and her white hair was tied up in a messy ponytail. She was standing with her hands to her sides and her head tilted back to look up at him. He noticed her eyes were tiny, bleeding red dots and her fangs slightly poked down from her light red lips, unmasked. Her chest heaved quietly, almost unnoticeably, and he caught a heavily buried scent he was very much familiar with. "I'm horny." The blonde's right eyebrow quirked up at her frank statement. The vampire waited for his answer, watching as her master leaned onto the frame of his door and crossed his leanly muscled arms. Naruto stepped aside and nodded into the room. "Come in." Naruto closed the door behind her and made sure to throw up a silent seal. Author's note: this is the start of a lemon scene. If you want to read it, link to the story is in the description. About at the same time. Konoha Shinobi Ward. Konoha. Tsunade lifted up an X-ray of her long-time teammate and her eyes narrowed at what she saw. Orochimaru sat perched on her desk, idly skimming through test results of other, unrelated ninjas. "It's good you came to me first, Orochi," the Senju Star medic said. "I'm not going to sugarcoat it, this looks bad." Orochimaru looked up and coughed into his fist. "It's slowly spreading through your left lung," she said, looking at another X-ray and humming. "It's already got 1/5 of your left lung and it doesn't look like it's stopping anytime soon." "I ran some tests on myself in my lab," the Snake Sage said, dropping the test results of the head medic and fixing Tsunade a strong look. "It's feeding on my chakra. How much longer before I'm a lost cause?" "At the pace the virus is going, I'll say, 40 years. Years?" Tsunade nodded certainly. "Give or take a few years. Your sage chakra is putting up a good fight." There were 2 dark spots in the lowest part of Orochimaru's left lung, clusters of smoke the snake man had unintentionally inhaled when his former student had expelled his killer intent after their attempted assassination. He was almost certain Naruto had intentionally poisoned him, not surprising since they had tried to kill him and reclaim darkness for Leaf. He suspected when his lungs were taken over by the potent smoke, it would result in a full system shutdown at worst. Tsunade answered the unvoiced question in the room. The brat's virus didn't infect me because my sage chakra is stronger at healing than yours. The man scoffed. You almost sound smug, Su. The woman shrugged with a smirk. Sage chakra is still sage chakra, at the very least yours is giving you 40 more years before what happens. She added as an afterthought. Give or take. A few years, I heard you the first time. Orochimaru sighed and coughed again. Is it airborne? No. Can anyone contact it? I'm not sure. Orochimaru scratched his chin and thought. Don't tell Hiruzen-sensei just yet. I want to run some more experiments on myself. I'm positive I can find a cure. The woman sat down behind her desk and crossed her left leg over her right. Are you sure you don't want to go back and ask the brat to take it out? If you were in his place, would you do that? I see your point. Orochimaru hopped off her desk and walked to the door, his hands deep in his pockets and his torso bent in concentration, his mind working at a mil a minute. Can you at least do something for me, Orochi? As you're looking for your cure, that is. The man stopped and looked over his shoulder, silently waiting for her to continue. Please, just, don't do anything illegal. Orochimaru only chuckled deeply and left the head medic's office. Tsunade sighed and pulled out a jug of sake from a secret compartment under her desk, tipping it into her mouth and slumping into her chair. She turned her chair to the window and quietly stared out at the starry night sky. Chapter 8. Kamuri Clan Private Training Compound. Kamuri Clan Compound. Northern Region. Dark Country. The deep voices of the soldiers jogging around the remarkably large training compound resonated through the air. Hop 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 hop. The training compound or facility was the largest in the country, and this one in particular was exclusively meant and used by Kamuri clan members, though it was still split to separate those of the lower rank from higher, meeting only in a general training ground at the very center of the massive complex. The jounin of the Kamuri clan were jogging on an oval-shaped 400-meter track in groups of 4, numbered up to 20, rhythmically running to the tune of their chants and huffing with each breath, expelling thin white mist. The men were bare-chested and the women wore either light gray tank tops or sports bras. Both genders wore black and gray camo ninja pants and black boots. The clan of ninjas were primarily blonde and blue-eyed, of varied tints and tones, and their skin colors also varied from pale white to mocha brown. It was unarguably the most diverse clan in the Dark Country, and they were also the dominant clan in the Dark Country black operatives, serving as closely to the leader of the country as possible. The trainers jogging before each group yelled an opening chant and the jounin finished it off, exhaling tightly to conserve as much oxygen as possible. There were ninjas assembled into neat formations, also split into smaller, workable groups that jounin trainers expertly managed. They barked out orders and the assembled jounin dutifully followed, running through previously lectured formations and strategies for unanticipated circumstances on the battlefield. There were 10 separate groups in the middle area of the track, still leaving enough space for them to move about. This was the outside training ground for Kamuri jounin and Chunin. This clan of people were especially loyal to Naruto, the supreme leader of Dark Country. And for good reason too. Their beloved leader was a birth member of their clan. The clan collectively saw it as an unimaginable honor and privilege to share the same blood as their leader. The clan of smoke users greatly populated black because of their reverence for their country's leader. Naruto sat back in his seat in a small assembled canopy smack dab in the center of the oval track, a faint crinkling smile at the corner of his eyes as he heard the chants from his clanmates. Honor to the smoke. The jounin trainers jogging on the tracks yelled. Loyalty to leader. Life for our country. Death for our leader. They returned, swearing not just their life and prosperity to their leader, but also their death in and out of battle. 3 groups in the middle were powering through push-ups and another group went through rigorous sit-ups. Their trainers shouted. Victory to our people. Success to Lord Naruto. The trainer of On Group, a light-skinned female, broke out in a singing tone. Oh, there is no hell in the service of our leader. Oh, there is no heaven for the enemies in his sights. Naruto chuckled. He turned to the Kamuri clan head and said. They're awfully enthusiastic, Lord Orochimaru. Lord Orochimaru was a war veteran in his late 80s. He was a dark-skinned man with heavy wrinkles on his forehead and cheeks, sandy blonde hair and small mustache. He had dull blue eyes. The old man was perched in a wheelchair in heavy-looking combat uniform, even though his legs haven't worked since they lost their functionality in the Civil War, of a short-sleeved gray shirt and black and gray urban camo shinobi pants with black stomping boots on his feet. Over his shoulder was a dark green jacket, A pair of thick black medicated glasses were set before his squinting eyes. The man bit into his fat brown cigar as he grinned at the young leader, blowing out a wisp of smoke from a corner of his lips. "You're a hero in these parts, Lord Naruto." The war-sagely old veteran leaned on his left forearm, to Naruto, and said in a not-so-quiet voice. "You should have seen the party we threw when we found out the legendary ghost is a member of this very clan." Naruto hummed with a smile. "I can only imagine." Not that Naruto wasn't flattered that his clan mates thought so highly of him, it was with the eagerness of their efforts to ensure his happiness. Aside from being the main ninjas in Naruto's Black, a silent organization formed by the leader to both work in tandem with him and also to accomplish the covert goals and aspirations of the country, they had also pleaded for their precious leader to take up the role as clan head as well as leader of the country. Lord Orochimaru readily agreed to the proposal before they brought it before Naruto, as he had lost his sons, daughters and grandchildren in the Civil War. The old man had no direct family left and it was only logical to want to appoint a younger, much stronger person to take his seat. Naruto politely declined. He explained to the clan head and the Kamuri elders that he already had his hands full with the responsibilities of leading the whole country, and adding the job of a clan head would derail and divert his attention. The heartbreak was evident when the news broke out. In his place, Naruto recommended the Kamuri Council to train a suitable successor. They dutifully followed his advice. The Kamuri clan, along with the rest of the clans of the country, was highly hierarchical, but unlike a majority of the clans, the Kamuri people were highly militaristic. They believed in loyalty, morale, order and discipline above anything, and some of these traits leaked out into the Kamuri civilian population. This had been the main tenets of the clan since before the Civil War, seeing as they were the first two clans to have helped found Dark Country as a whole. Naruto adjusted his leader's robe and set his hat on his head properly as he observed his clan mates work through exercises and commands. "You said this is the first training exercise to qualify for being a black operative, right?" "Yes, the first of two. The second being Suaki's training exercise." Naruto slowly nodded. He had been the one to write the requirements for entrance into the Black Ops. This exercise occurred only once in 3 weeks. I'm still stunned by how many people want into black. I mean, we still have more regular jounin and chunin, but the actual best of the best want into black. Black is the peak of all ninja aspirations, Lord Naruto. To serve at your side and perform key missions to the prosperity of our dear country is the dream of any average citizen. The cigar-smoking man murmured, his black spectacled gaze fixed on the marching Black Ops aspirants. "If only I could still walk." Naruto patted the man's shoulder with a genial quirk of his the corner so his eyes. "If you could still walk, I would have a serious competitor for my seat." The man fell into peals of laughter, rumbling through his chest as he tossed his head back and almost lost his cigar. "You're a very funny man, Lord Naruto." The leader laughed at the old man's laughter. Nanako Hogo clan head and the only other high-ranking shinobi under the canopy, quirked up an eyebrow. "I don't understand why anyone competing for your seat is amusing, Lord Naruto." The 50-something-year-old woman crossed her arms and her legs, sniffing slightly. "Why compete when you know you can't hope to win?" "It was a joke, Nanako." The dark-skinned man sighed, exhaling more smoke from a corner of his lips. "Something you will never understand." The woman visibly bristled. "I'll have you know, you old fart, that I know a fair few jokes." Now guys." The Kamuri clan head scoffed. "I call donkey shit. I'll tell you a joke now." Nanako shot back to the uninterested Kamuri clan head, itching and twitching to lunge at the crippled man. She cleared her throat loudly, somewhat distracting the men and women doing jumping jacks some feet from them. "Why did the chicken cross the road?" The old man didn't answer, only rolling his eyes and leaning away from the Hogo clan head. Naruto sat forward quickly and, with a more than eager tone in his voice, asked in place of Orochimaru so as to prevent a brawl. "Why did the chicken cross the road?" The woman laughed quietly behind her hands. Finally, after some seconds of giggling to herself, she answered. To get to the other side." Naruto patiently waited for another punchline in the joke, something. Anything. The woman eagerly tilted to him and grinned a little, looking at him with reflective orbs. The leader started in his seat when he realized that was the joke. "Ah, ha. 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 Ha ha ha." Nanako sat back smugly, and sent a dirty, proud look to the oldest ninja in the village, not realizing that Naruto had only laughed to prevent a village clash from happening, clearly obvious from his fake laugh. "I told you." Naruto gave the old man a strong look, a look that threatened hell if he said anything other than a lie. The wizened old man snorted. Fine. Nanako Hogo was a kunoichi from a strictly traditional clan, similar to the Pantsa Senshi clan, and so she did not truly understand the general concept of jokes. Of all the challenges the powerful clan head had in her life, being funny or understanding what funny meant always eluded. Naruto sympathized with her. Her upbringing was strict and mainly based on ninja training, etiquette and manners befitting a woman. It was during Naruto's reign as leader that she tried her best to relax so as to sidle up as close to him as possible, trying her best to match his behavior with her own so as to attract his attention. At that moment she was in what she referred to as informal combat wear. She was in a shimmering green dress reaching her ankles that had a lengthwise slit up to her left hip, showing tight black shorts and a toned, blemishless leg. On her feet were a pair of black-heeled shinobi sandals and perched on her head, on her soft, flowing brown hair, was a small tiara speckled with gems and rubies. The dress she wore was sleeveless, exposing a sleeve of clan tattoos on both of her arms, leaving bejeweled rings and golden bands to glimmer on her thin fingers. Nanako was the leader of the clan that had sole responsibility over the obsidian mines in the country, seeing as they were the only ones the raw dark stone's evil chakra didn't affect. The Hogo clan's atrocious eyesight and their mole summoning might have something to do with it. The 50-something-year-old woman looked very good for her age. She had a lithe, slender build from years and years of training, but her coal-black eyes swirled also with years and years of seeing bloodshed and death. The corners of her eyes had light, barely visible crow's feet. She had once commented that her youthful looks, as well as that of her clan mates, was part in, thanks to their diet, and another smaller part went to the Uzumaki skincare products. Nanako looked 24 years younger than Naruto. Naruto knew the real reason for her clan's remarkable youthful looks. Similar to how Suaki can cycle fresh and replenishing blood around her body, thus sustaining her energy, her chakra and her youth, and how the Uzumaki were simply born into their longevity, the Hogo clan could run nature chakra through their bodies on instinct because of their connection with their mole summons. The only difference was that Uzumaki and Hogo could still die from fatal wounds, and also when they reached the full extent their bodies were willing to carry them. Suaki, using her bloodline as the vampire blood release user, the only known one in the whole the continent, virtually made her immortal. She frequently reminded her teacher that she would die with him when his time came. Suaki was currently heading to the Gato clan compound to inform Mikoto Gato that their leader was in the Kamuri clan compound. Naruto's mind wandered back to that morning, now only a few hours ago. Flashback, that morning. Naruto snorted in his sleep, turning and pulling the small warmth in his right arm closer to his body. A pair of arms tightened around his middle and a head wedged into the crook of his neck. The leader groaned and rubbed his eyes, muttering, "You're staring, you weirdo." He cracked open one cerulean blue eye and looked down at the raptly staring woman in his arms, his laughing gaze mirrored off her reflective, jovially smiling red eyes, now back to their normal size. The white-haired vampire smacked her lips sleepily and the corners lightly turned up in a faint smile. "Hey." Suaki smiled slightly wider. "Hey. Yesterday night, huh?" Naruto said, his exposed teeth chattering as he spoke. "Pretty crazy." "It was awesome," she said quietly, stressing each word. Her cheeks turned a dark shade of red as her teacher chuckled deeply, his laughter warming her to her very core. "I'm glad you liked it." He casually looked away and she raised a curious eyebrow. "Maybe next time, we can go a bit slower." Her heart thudded, clamoring in her chest. "What do you think?" The girl pressed her face into her teacher's neck and laughed airily, her whole face now an embarrassing shade of red.
I didn't think you'd agree, last night, I mean."
"Well, you can't get any more forward than I'm horny." She jabbed his gut as he burst out laughing. "I threw myself out there," she whispered honestly. She had hoped for the best, that her long-time idol and friend wouldn't reject her. Konoha, when they were all still one big happy family, frequently pushed and poked for Suaki to flat out, in plain and simple words, tell Naruto how she felt. Naruto was a master of many things, but subtlety in anything other than murder was not something he understood. This was something Naruto was glad had changed with time for him, for being a leader demanded subtlety nearly all day. "I'm not gonna lie," Naruto said, placing his left arm behind his head and keeping his right around his naked student. "I always thought you were only into girls." The woman sat up quickly. "Seriously, sensei?" Naruto shrugged. "You thought I was a lesbian? The way you kept looking at Konoha, or those Ame medics." "Only because you were standing right there," she exclaimed, her stoic facade falling apart. Naruto raised his hands in defeat and sat up, realizing he too was still naked from their last romp. "I'm sorry." She glared at him silently, her fists clenched tightly on the rumpled bedsheet. The vampire might be open to going at it with another woman, though only as long as her teacher joined in. "How about we have lunch together later?" The vampire huffed and crossed her arms stubbornly. "We always have lunch together. This time we don't talk about work, just the two of us talking about whatever else we want." The expressionless woman perked up and shot forward, sashing her lips into Naruto's grinning teeth. It still felt a bit awkward for Naruto to kiss the woman with his teeth, especially since he didn't have any lips to kiss with, but he allowed the vampire free rein to do what she wanted. "Okay." He pulled back and checked the time. 10:01 a.m. It sucked that they couldn't sleep for longer, but duty called. "You can shower first." Suaki hopped out of the bed, snagging one of Naruto's t-shirts from his closet and wiggling her way into the large shirt, skipping merrily out of Naruto's room. As she shut the door, Naruto released a breath and swung his legs off his bed, wearing a pair of boxers and sitting back down onto his bed. Suaki was in bloodlust last night. Her attention was primarily on maintaining the blood connection she had with Onion for 6 long months as well as her duties as his assistant. She couldn't spare the time to expel her pent-up emotions accumulated from her connection with the young and very much emotionally driven Onion as well as the ones she suppressed while on S-ranked black missions out of the country. Risking it and going on a hunting trip in the dark forest could sever her blood bond with Onion. 6 months worth of backed-up emotions, finally able to pour out, but hunting animals wasn't enough for her. Naruto saw that as he looked at her pin-like red eyes, her panting chest and her protruding canines. There was the danger that if he didn't accept to release that tension in the safest way possible, that it would all pour out on the people of the country. Their night revealed her affection for him, the one he hadn't ever noticed. It also surfaced a well of muddled emotions he had for her, like how he dearly treasured their time together and how he could and would go to hell and back to protect her. He had done so when Hanzo had held her hostage. Konan, in his other hand, the Salamander Summoner, had given the condition that the top ranks of the Akatsuki should choose, Nagato killing Yahiko to free Konan or Naruto killing himself to free Suaki. The Cage was known to be a man of his word, there was no doubt he would follow through. Naruto found his blade already up to his neck, no hesitation in his movements, as Yahiko plunged Nagato's kunai into his heart. He didn't even look at Yahiko as he fell, only running as fast as his legs could carry him to Hanzo, fully intent on using his very last drop of chakra to catch Suaki as Hanzo threw her. Naruto fled away with the weakened vampire as a vengeful Nagato summoned the King of Hell to decimate and tear apart Hanzo. The blonde clearly cared for Suaki, more so than he cared for his first 3 friends. He didn't want to manipulate her emotions like Nagato was with Konan, keeping the angel of Ame in a cage in Ame, and he didn't want to play with her feelings like Konan had done with him while he pined for her. The man knew he cared deeply for Suaki, more than anyone or anything on the planet, so he grasped that emotion with all his might and stood up, fixing on his half-mask over his lower face and swiping his towel as Suaki called through the door. "Sensei, the shower's free." Flashback end. Now he had leader business to attend to. He discarded those troubling, muddled emotions as he centered his mind once again, watching as his student approached with the Gato clan head. They pulled up a seat and formed a circle, with Rimuru Kamuri turning his wheelchair around to face inwards. Naruto clapped his hands and said, "Now we're all here, we'll get down to business." He looked to Suaki, who had on her blank red half-face mask, and the black commander brought out a rolled-up scroll, opening it to show the map of the continent and dropping it on an unsealed stool in the middle. "I'm sure you're all aware of the Dark Sand Joint Task Force." They all nodded. Here is a refresher: their main job is to patrol and guard the borders between darkness and sand, going further up north to watch the border between sand, stone, and rock. Dark Country's border to Fire Country is handled by the Defense Corps. Makoto and Nanako nodded in acknowledgement as their leader looked at them. Them being the 2 leaders of the Internal Defense Organization, Makoto protecting the north and Nanako overseeing the south. The task force is reporting that there are small tussles along the rock and stone borders. They also see fights along Fire Country borders and rock. Rimuru scratched a corner of his nose and asked, "Their shinobi forces are fighting?" Suaki answered for Naruto, as the Dark Sand Joint Task Force reported to Black. "No. They're gang turf wars." "Gangs?" Nanako wondered incredulously. "Like, petty thieves?" "Low-ranked missing ninjas and rogue samurai have joined in," Suaki added. It's not as large scale as war between nations, but it would escalate sooner or later to include home countries and hidden villages. I went to investigate with my team, Suaki continued. And we found out that the Fire Lord's son is the one supplying funds and weapons to the Fire Country gangs. We didn't find out any reason for him doing this. How is this any of our business? Nanako asked, bowing slightly to Naruto. If you recall correctly, this is almost like how the First and Second War began, small, insignificant fights breaking out along the border that, sooner or later, encompassed the country and then the whole continent, Naruto said, titling his head to the side and narrowing his eyes at the youthful lady. No single person could accurately trace back the true origin of both wars, only resolving that it had started from small fights along borders. Annexation of uninvolved countries, enlistment of infants, families getting displaced, separated or murdered, loss of order and human morality, widespread death and destruction. Should I go on? The woman bowed again, this time in sincere apology. No, my lord. Lord Leader, Makoto humbly said. If this is a war council, why are Amara Chue Inku, Daiki Haru Pansa Senshi and Ginkgo Suzuma Bachi not here as well? I spoke with them about this yesterday in the art exhibition, but they are mobilizing their black clan mates for the mission. Makoto looked at his leader with a question in his brown orbs. What mission? I want all of the warring faction eliminated to the very last person, and I want the Fire Lord's son killed, and his death is to be made to look like a suicide. Trace each and every person involved and clear them off the face of the earth. Anyone with an important status should be made to look like he killed himself. He paused and sat back, placing his right ankle onto his left knee and lacing his fingers on his knee. The job should be clean and a testament to the skill of this country. The clan heads were stunned into silence. Naruto fixed each of them a strong, dominant glare. I am preventing a third war. Nanako nervously cleared her throat. What about our allies? I don't think Suna would be happy to hear we killed the son of the Fire Daimyo. That is why I'm keeping this order under the Dark Leader's seal of secrecy. My black will be the ones performing this and, he jabbed a thumb to himself. I will kill any involved in Fire Country. Suaki looked up, surprise on her pale face. Sensei. That's final, Naruto said, pointedly narrowing his eyes at his student. The clan heads, feeling their own arguments hot on the tip of their tongues, kept their mouths rightly shut, submitted to their leader. He nodded to Makoto and Nanako. You two will triple internal defense, but make sure no citizen or foreigner notices. I cannot emphasize how much this mission must be kept under wraps. We will make sure order is maintained in the country, Lord Leader, Makoto said humbly, placing his hand over his heart, and Nanako copied his action, bowing to Naruto again. 10 black squads will be mobilized. Suaki took note of his command, already listing out the teams she wanted on this important mission. Team 11, her team, was the first on her mind. His eyes dimmed grimly. I don't want to be the one to say this, but a third war will come, no matter how hard we try. Tension from the past war has not passed and old wounds haven't yet closed. Grudges need to be crossed out. The world is still in a fragile state, another war would rip it to shreds and leave us all with nothing. Then, sir, why are we doing this if all that waits for us is a third great war? Pushing back the inevitable day. Give ourselves a little more time before we allow the rest of the world to kill themselves. The masked leader sat forward and perched his forearms on his knees, lacing his fingers. This is for our people. Rimuru closed his eyes and his shoulders heaved tiredly. Well said, Lord Naruto. We move out this night, Naruto said, and the clan heads, besides Rimuru, stood up and saluted. Dismissed. They left, leaving Naruto, Suaki and Rimuru to continue watching the training regimen of the Kamuri Jounin and Chunin aspiring to serve in black. Suaki slyly slipped her chair next to her teacher's and placed a supportive hand on top of his. Naruto's crystal blue eyes flicked to her and he breathed out from his nose, blowing out thin black smoke. Ever so slowly, Naruto's eyes glowed with a silent smile. Rimuru made sure not to comment, slickly swiveling his wheelchair around to properly face his clanmates. He hid his smirk. Naruto turned his left palm up and Suaki threaded her fingers through his. Naruto's hand curled up and he held her hand, shooting her another side-eyed smile, a genuine smile. Her teacher then lifted his right hand and pointed at a seemingly random 16-year-old boy. Do you see him? The commander followed his finger to a boy with very low-cut blonde hair and hard eyes, focused ahead as he jogged on the track. Yes. His parents used to own a fishery close to the royal clan Eastern Temple. The royal clan took all their fish near the end of the war, and when they went to complain, do you know what they did? The vampire could vaguely guess, but she shook her head earnestly, listening to her teacher speak. They took him from his home and brought him to the palace. His parents were executed and, so that he won't run, they cut off his legs. He motioned to his knees. From the knees down. I found him in a dungeon during one of our raids. Suaki then noticed the subtle stagger in the teen's steps as he sprinted with his group. He's got on Tsunade brand prosthetics. Is that why he became a jounin so quickly? His prosthetics? Ha! Naruto snorted. No. Teiyu's taijutsu is pretty good. I'll keep an eye on him if he gets into black. Suaki promised. Naruto bobbed his head and his head titled to the side, towards hers though not looking directly at her. He pointed again at another teen. This one was a 14-year-old girl with wavy blonde hair tied up into a messy ponytail. She had on a pair of thick black glasses over her eyes, similar to the ones Orochimaru had on. She jogged in the group behind Teiyu, the crippled taijutsu user, desperately heaving for air with each inhale and exhale. Sweat drenched her forehead and her limbs shook with each step. See her? The girl in the glasses. Yes. A trainer jogged back and yelled harshly into the girl's face, roaring for her to quit. Konoha ninjas raided the Kamuri clan compound back in the war, some months before we arrived, and they murdered many smoke users. The Leaf ninjas killed her parents in front of her and blinded her with a hot poker so that their deaths would be the last thing she sees. The 14-year-old jounin turned to her trainer and spat in his face, jogging along with her group. The masked leader laughed loudly along with the old Kamuri clan head at the normally vivacious girl's daring insult to her group's jounin trainer. I didn't know it at the time, but I killed the same squad of shinobi that murdered her parents when we were kicking them out of the royal clan's temples in the southern region. The three legendary ninjas watched on as the girl belted out the morale chants as loudly as she could. She told me she was going to serve under my feet for the rest of her life. The vampire shrugged. You have many admirers. She took a blood oath, Naruto blurted. The white-haired lady sat away from him, though not removing her hand from his. The blonde held up his hands and quickly said, I didn't make her do it, I swear. She just came into my office and finalized the contract with her blood. I don't know who taught her the seals, where she found it, or how the hell she got a strand of my hair. The irate vampire calmed down somewhat. Thankfully she's the only one that has done this. A blood contact bonded the soul of the contract bearer with that of the target person. It only succeeded if the bearer well and truly felt a strong positive emotion, commonly love and admiration. In essence, the contract bearer was to protect the object of their affection with their life even at the cost of their own. The bearer was to obey each command under the consequence of a brutal punishment from the blood contract. If the loved one died in any way, then the bearer would die also. Suaki earnestly looked into her master's red eyes. Do you want me to? She slid a single, silent finger across her throat, flicking her eyes to the struggling girl. Nothing in the contract says anything will happen to you if she dies. Naruto patted the tense woman's head, an action that had the dual effect of calming the vampire down and making her flush red. No, of course not. Killing a comrade is bad. Suhi couldn't believe he had to tell her that. In your free time, find a loophole in the contract and unbind us. Make sure she doesn't find out though, I don't want it breaking her heart. But I want to break her heart. The black commander whined quietly, batting her eyes at her teacher and holding his hand up to her thudding heart. Naruto laughed at her attempt. Su Tilda. She's just a kid. She threw his hand away and stood up. Whatever. Cheer up, Su. Lunch would be my treat. He patted her seat and she begrudgingly took it back. My point is, no matter how hard I try to remodel and rebuild this country, there will always be remnants of the past to haunt us. Sure, we've had 7 years of rapid development and advancement, and I forecast the coming years will bring even more wonderful development, but at our current state we desperately need that time to get ourselves in complete order. It wasn't that Naruto was sheltering his people, the proof being he established the 3 main defense and offensive sub-organizations in Dark Country, all of whom were sworn to him, the Police Force, the Defense Corps and Black. Another smaller, less darkness-centric organization, Black Sand Joint Task Force, was the second proof Naruto wasn't coddling his people. He gave his people remarkable free rein to live their lives and make their money, such as establishing business within and outside of the country, whether or not in an allied nation or not, though he preferred it to be in the former. Years ago, he had officially signed for more funding to go to orphanages and old people's homes, of which was being well and truly implemented and used for their stated purpose. About 2 years ago, Naruto had successfully raised the standard of living to the extent that there was virtually no one without a home, reasonable income, approvable healthcare and free basic education, all without the aid of his present alliances. The leader had also implemented a steady retirement benefit for his ninjas and civilians in risky jobs, like construction workers, chemical scientists and wild animal conservationists that worked around the dark forest. More and more money was coming into the country, either from the high-paying missions or their trade with river country. Every week or two a substantial amount of money was added into the country's money reserves, bumping their spending limit further up with each addition. This increase in money not only raised the value of their products to non-allied nations but also allowed Naruto more room to fund departments and projects that weren't just about his ninjas. For instance, Naruto sent more money to the Dark Country Laboratory for the scientists to buy state-of-the-art instruments and also to begin their search in finding cures. He had his engineers look into inventing a fully functional railway system that went only within the country. The last major thing Naruto had signed to be done was for the civilian academy curriculum to expand to include subjects imported from Uzushio and Suna. A regular, monthly sum of money was sent to the Kurama clan to sustain them as Konoha refused to cater to their needs, seeing as the clan of painters disagreed to become leaf ninjas. Naruto and Sabaku no Tetsuyo Sandaime Kazekage were expecting to harvest the first batch of crops from the Suna farm by the end of the year. Naruto wasn't one to not give credit to where he had inspired the development plans from. Amigakure was a highly industrialized nation and Naruto only tweaked and adjusted bits and pieces from the plan Ame used and applied it to darkness. So far, he was wildly successful. The loyalty of his people was already ensured, with or without the development he brought, but their devotion and admiration for him went up tenfold at the rapid level of development sweeping through the whole country. Before I can say our defenses can repel unallied invading forces, we need at least 5 more years. If Kumo, Iwa and Snow Country, 3 nations that had been constant long-time allies, chose to set their sights on darkness, then they had no chance to keep them at bay for longer than a year. Konoha would undoubtedly join in the assault from another angle, without allying with their enemies, and this would slash their defense time to half a year. Suna and Kiri could aid in keeping the 3 allies back for a while but not for long, especially because Sand and Mist couldn't attack Leaf, seeing as Sand was an ally to Leaf and Mist was on non-aggression terms. They would be locked in from all sides. Even traveling by boat to Uzushio would be a challenge. The foreigners in our country are also on the list of people I want to protect. Naruto clarified as Orochimaru turned his wheelchair around. The man stroked his mustache and mumbled. I agree with you, Lord Naruto. War is the last thing any decent human being would want. He glanced down at his legs with a down sigh. He had to switch himself with a subordinate of his as the latter accidentally stepped on a landmine set by the royal clan, nearly ruining their attempt at helping their clan mates flee the royal clan's invasion. It was the fastest he had ever run in his life and it was the last time he used his legs. His clan could create smoke with their fire and water affinities, and neither of those were dominant enough to be called a second bloodline, not like how Naruto's lightning chakra was a bloodline and the resulting smoke, stronger than regular Kamuri smoke, could be formed with lightning affinity mixing with water affinity. To cut the distance from their master's power, Orochimaru Kamuri and his council created a new seal-less jutsu the clan of water and fire users could use to nearly automatically replenish their energy. It was a hide-and-smoke clan technique they called steam engine that only those with high Chunin and Jounin skill could pull off. The ninjas were required to take a tiny bit of their fire affinity and, for lack of a better word, drop it onto a larger body of water affinity in their reserves. Instead of making smoke, it created steam and the effects would prolong the energy and strength of the Kamuri user. The Kamuri ninjas marching around the track had been doing so since 6 in the morning. Presently, it was 10. It was almost like how Naruto could bounce his lightning affinity chakra inside his body, striking numerous muscles, bones and organs, and revving up his speed, stamina and endurance. The process, for Naruto, was painful for obvious reasons but the end product never disappointed him, but for the Kamuri people the effect was only destabilizing them with how their fire affinity would be more than their water after a while. When this process of creating steam went on longer than 3 hours, the user would become dizzy or, in a terrible case reported to Naruto some years back, would develop temporary vertigo. The clan head of the Kamuri clan was conditioning his people on how to overcome the tiring and weighty effects of having more water chakra than fire in their natural reserves. Naruto rubbed his hand together. Enough of all this sad talk. How about we spar, Lord Orochimaru? The older blonde man's eyebrows shot into his hairline. Naruto chuckled lowly. I saw what you did to that Kiri ninja earlier this morning. The leader rolled his eyes when the man's eyes bugged out. You're disabled, not vulnerable. For what it's worth, he tried to ditch paying for his breakfast bagel at my friend's granddaughter's bakery. Oh yeah, I saw that too. Naruto waved it off. I just think it was a bit excessive. I sent him an apology some time ago. Rimuru answered flippantly. And anyway, I'm still a bit rusty, I might have pulled something back there. Pesh Haoyu, you almost killed that guy. Suaki cleared her throat. If you don't mind, Lord Rimuru, I would like to spar with Naruto-sensei. Naruto turned to his student, giving Rimuru a chance to sigh in relief, even placing his hand on his chest and exhaling smoke. No, a really real fight. Wait, don't you have 10 more minutes before you have to go and get your black operatives together? I'll send a message to my team to get things in order. She bit her thumb and pulled up her right sleeve all the way up to her upper arm. She swiped her bleeding thumb over a black commander seal tattoo on her outer upper arm. A tingle went over her body and she pulsed chakra into the seal 4 times, directing a message to Black Team 11. Suaki pulled down her sleeve and cycled the blood leaking from her thumb back in, healed the wound and smoothing out the scar till there was no sign of it left. Done. They'll know what to do. She directed her gaze to the still relieved Kamuri clan head. Do you have a free training ground, preferably outdoors?
I haven't agreed.
Suaki pulled her master onto his feet. We haven't fought in 4 years, sensei. I want to see how far I've come. Naruto hummed, then he pointed at the dark-skinned clan head. We'll settle this later. Those on the field that noticed the leader and the black commander acting awfully close shook it off. They had known each other for the longest time. They were openly best friends and Naruto was Suaki's teacher. Naruto was a carefree, open-minded man and Suaki was more subdued and accepting of the masked blonde's relaxed mannerisms. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary. Let's have the fight out here. Rimuru suggested. It'll show my men both of your power and increase morale in the camp. Good idea, Naruto said, shrugging off his robe and folding it, dropping it on his vacant seat and placing his wide-brimmed hat atop. He was in a gray shirt and black pants with black sandals. Down his arms, from his collar to his fingertips, was a thick vertical black line that broke out and branched into his fingers, leaking into his fingernails and turning them black, like he had painted them black. He flexed his fingers and rolled his shoulders, cracking his neck. There were white bandages wrapped around his ankles. He didn't look to be carrying any of the basic ninja weapons. The leader ran a hand through his spiky blonde hair and listened as Rimuru roared. Gather round, all of you. The exercising stopped. Lord Naruto and Lady Ketsueki want to spar. They marched in strict formation and created a wide circular space. There was a pathway of ninjas in attention that Naruto calmly walked through, a fair distance to the sparring ground. Suaki followed behind in her own combat gear, a dark red long-sleeved shirt and black ninja pants with black shinobi sandals. She had on the standard Jounin flak jacket over her torso, unlike Naruto, and also not like her teacher she had on the dark country hitate on her forehead. There was a kunai pouch on the side of her right thigh and a shuriken pouch on the side of her left thigh. She clenched her hands and reached back, tying her smooth white hair into a heat ponytail. She marched confidently, her red eyes gradually shrinking into small dots and her needle-like teeth poked out from under her lips, almost like the other night she knocked on her teacher's door. They stopped in the middle of the wide sparring ground and the Kamuri Jounin and Chunin sat down on the ground, crossing their legs. Rimuru was wheeled in through the pathway, stopping at the edge of the sparring ground. The Kamuri ninjas watched as Suaki pulled up her long sleeves to show a seal tattoo on each forearm. Naruto cocked his head to the side, interested, and his eyes sparkled inquisitively. Neither of us can go all out, of course. He observed the wide berth they had been given, probably wide enough to equal any standard training ground. How do you propose we do this, Su? The vampire fought down the blush at the overly familiar name. If I tag you, I win. No intangibility, Naruto-sensei. Naruto stood in a thinking position, scratching his masked chin. That doesn't sound fair. To who? Suaki asked incredulously. Naruto palmed his face and muttered. Fine. If I can't be intangible, then at least allow me to defend myself. He pushed his hands into his pockets and leaned back lazily, his eyes turning up in a wide smile. Go easy on me, okay? I'm rusty. Rimuru scratched the side of his nose as his leader recycled his own excuse. The white-haired lady went down into a rigid fighting style, spitting. Like hell I will. Naruto recognized it as the taijutsu style he taught her when she began exhibiting more of her vampire traits, the vengeful heaven bat fighting style. It made use of light steps, quick strikes with 4 of her fingers and feet, extreme athleticism and inventiveness. Naruto idly wondered why it was this style, out of the 2 he taught her and the other one she learned on her own, that she chose. The Kamuri ninjas turned to their leader and spoke in hushed whispers as he didn't drop into a fighting stance. Her eyes narrowed as they blazed over her teacher's body, studying his posture and his immediate surroundings. She smirked. Naruto raised an eyebrow, interested. Her hand swished before her and she shifted her weight to her left leg, the one in front. Naruto closed his eyes and chuckled to himself. His hidden jaw creaked open and he said, "Begin." The word echoed in the deathly silent training ground. The vampire leapt forward and her whole body phased out of sight. Naruto flowed under a strike to his heart, after images flooding after each movement. He took a step back and raised his left leg, clashing it against a shin aimed for his side. The after images followed suit. Still with his leg blocking her blow, he hopped up with his other foot and flipped backwards as the commander spat out a bloody senbone needle. He hopped back, bouncing in his heels. He removed his hands from his pockets and beckoned to his student. "Come on, then." His head shifted back from a 4-fingered strike, smoothly moving under her second attack for his neck. He rolled forward as she swung her left leg after his head, pushing off the ground and spinning around to face his student. The girl blazed out of sight again and Naruto batted aside a poke to his neck, jabbed his fist into her stomach and grinned savagely under his mask when he heard a distinct, worrying crack upon impact. A collective wind swept over the onlookers. He slid to his right as she shot her knee at him, giving him time to feel the painful throb of his knuckles. She had strengthened her abdominal muscles on the moment of impact. Naruto shook his hand and the pain was gone. He noticed her crack her left fist into her stomach 3 times, somewhat feeling the pain from Naruto's former blow, and speeding to him again, her fingers laced with crimson red chakra. Naruto squatted down and picked out 2 kunai from her holster, an action that had her drag her knee back and surge it forward, thicker and faster than humanly possible. "Oof," Naruto exclaimed as he stabbed the ground with the ninja knives, grabbed the knee dangerously close to his nose. The ground thudded and caved in under him as the sheer strength in her kick traveled through him and passed into the ground, much like a lightning conductor. He slammed her foot hard into the ground, cackling loudly as it dug knee-deep into the ground and throwing the vampire off balance. His fingers blurred, picking up the kunai on the ground and he jammed them under her chin. Crick! The kunai broke and Naruto jumped back as both of Suaki's hands burned towards his face. The woman grabbed her buried leg and yanked it clear out of the ground. She bared her teeth under her mask and hissed. "You're not taking me seriously." Naruto didn't answer, only crouching down onto the ground like a lion ready to pounce. His sky blue eyes flashed hot white, then back. White energy traveled down his right arm, flowing along the black markings there to the tip of his fingers. He flicked his wrist and black smoke ebbed from his palm, forming a smooth, gleaming ninjato. The single red-bladed edge of the silver Uzushio steel pulsed with black smoke. Naruto twirled the ninjato in his hand and held it in a reverse grip. Suaki grinned widely, breaking out of her uncaring expression in favor of showing her excitement. Yes, whoa, her hands clapped together and caught Naruto's ninjato between them as it made to plunge into her heart. Her skin sizzled at the sweltering, hellish heat coming from the smoking silver blade, something that had shocked her to the core, and she hastily let go. She didn't dare look at her hands, or away from her master, for fear of what she was going to see. She whipped out a senbone from a collection in storage seal on her forearm and used it to block a ninjato strike that would have split her head in half. She grunted as Naruto's foot Spartan kicked her in her sore abdomen. Luckily for her, she had strengthened the muscles there in preparation and used her chakra to root herself into the ground. Her knee blazed up and Naruto smashed it aside with the back of his left hand, bringing his forehead down on her own with a gleeful laugh. Her hitate provided no protection. One moment she was on her feet, the next she was on her back, the back of her head pounded painfully and her vision blurry from the headbutt. Her mind cleared quick enough to notice that the sunlight had been blotted out. She cursed as she rolled sideways from an axe kick from the ghost. Thum! She flipped onto her feet, hopping over Naruto's right foot as it made to clear her off her feet. She sent a sequence of blows to his chest, all of which he deflected with the flat side of his burning hot, smoking weapon. She ignored the pain and flashed through 7 one-handed seals, using her other hand to keep her teacher back with more strikes. Hide and art, demon vampire blood release, earth zombie uprising. A fist bounced against her left cheek as she finished the set of hand seals, sending her half mask off her face, and Naruto hummed at what he had done, stepped away as Suaki spat out the resulting mouthful of blood from the blow onto the ground. 5 pairs of hands ripped out of the ground and grabbed his legs, dragging him down with the fervor of ravenously hungry wolves. Their hunger had him up to his chest in 2 seconds. Suaki wiped her bleeding mouth with the back of her hand and stepped to him in a blink of speed, her leg drawn back and ready to kick off his head like a football. Naruto closed his eyes and his skinless jaw creaked with humor. For his own, he didn't need hand seals. Lightning release, 4th degree burn. White crackling lightning exploded out of him, washing over himself and Suaki, charring the earth hands black. The leader grunted as he ripped his arms out of the hardened ground and hefted himself out of the ground. He rumbled to where Suaki last was, seeing as there was a thin film of dust after his lightning jutsu, twirling his smoking sword. His ears twitched. He deftly dodged a rain of deathly silent blood senbon aimed at his chest. He saw a glint of red and that was the only warning he got. An arrow made out of blood clanged against the flat side of his ninjato, exploding into a shower of misty redness that Naruto expertly contained by blowing a gust of air from deep down in his lungs, thinning it down and reducing the effect of the blood in the air. Making Suaki bleed was always a mistake any enemy on the field, but Naruto purposely did it to see how inventive she could be. The blonde sucked in as much air into his lungs as the blood mist he blew away circled back and surrounded his immediate vicinity. The blood particles in the air doubled and created a 10-foot cube around him, encasing him with tiny particles of her blood. He could still very well see about him and people could see him, as the light red cube floated in a tight formation around him, but he dared not breathe in and get the blood particles into his airways. If that happened, fighting his vampire student would be significantly harder. Naruto realized something at that moment. She was implementing the lesson he gave her 6 months ago, the one he taught her as they watched the construction of the leader's tower and the same day Mito Uzumaki first visited the country. An assassin's worst nightmare is fighting a stronger enemy in one-on-one fight on a featureless terrain. The particles around him doubled again, and those two multiplied, making the red blood in the air thicken and make it harder for the Kamuri watchers to peer in. The man still held his breath, the air smelt of Suaki, he could see nothing but red and he could sense nothing but her chakra. She was hiding her tracks. Naruto's hidden grinning jaw creaked with excitement. Oh! He flicked his ninjato holding hand and the blade disappeared. He stood in a straight, rigid posture and tilted his head down, closing his eyes calmly. The Kamuri Jounin became alarmed at the relaxed position of their leader. So far, Blood had used jutsu and abilities that would be nigh impossible for them to counter and escape from. Outside the blood cube terrain, they couldn't see or sense the Black Commander. Hidden art, demon vampire blood release, vampire empress's killer intent bloodhounds. Dozens of coal black eyes flicked open around Naruto, slobbering jaws bared and deep growls reverberated through the smoke user's very core. Killer intent throbbed from the cube in dangerous waves, washing over them and bathing them in hate. They clenched their fists and powered through the hate and wrath of the vampire. Naruto didn't move. He didn't open his eyes. He didn't breathe. He sharply looked to his right. His left hand shot up and caught a straight punch to his face, the hand melted out from his grip and his right shin blocked a roundhouse kick, bending down under an overhead kick. He hummed and slithered away from a hail of silent blood senbone trained for his back, catching two and ducking down from a blazing red jab to his throat. He stabbed the red medical needles into Suaki's right foot, still without his eyes open, and quickly rose up with an uppercut that rattled her brain and her skull. Her feet lifted off the ground after the merciless blow and he caught her ankles as they made to pass his shoulders, a split second before she disappeared into her blood mist, and brought her down straight into the ground. She burst into blood mist and the mist surged towards him, but the man flipped through 15 seals, saying in his head, "Water release, cold rapids." He exhaled and clear water blew out from his mouth, washing over the incoming blood mist and freezing it in its tracks. This technique should have only been possible if he mixed wind and water together. He didn't stop breathing out nor did he release the last seal of the water jutsu, controlling the chilling rapids to rush about him, solidifying the blood mist as the water touched the vampire blood particles. He finally stopped breathing out and opened his eyes, sighing as there was nothing but red-dyed frozen water about him in an open-top square. He winced and tittered to himself when he finally felt the blood needle stabbed into his right calf. Ow! Suaki stood there, her right knee on the ground and both of her hands wrapped around the senbone, holding its senbone in place, deep in his calf. She was panting for air. "You got me." She had used the noise of him using the freezing water jutsu to rush at him with. It was a simple attack. She somehow felt her teacher had allowed her to do it. Though she felt no less accomplished. She was still a long way before she could even dream to match the ghost, but she was getting close. She yanked out her senbone and fell back onto her knees, her pale hands on her knees and her head lowered, panting lightly. Suddenly, the Kamuri watchers erupted into rancorous cheers, clapping, cheering, hooting and whooping deafeningly. Suaki's hands went to her teacher's calf and held it, dragging out any trace of her blood in his leg. She looked up through her eyelashes as the masked man held out a hand for her, his eyes closed in a smile. Well done. She reached up and grabbed his elbow as he grabbed hers, pulling her off her knees and onto her feet. The Kamuri clan mates were yelling Suaki's moniker. Blood. 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 The white-haired woman bowed her head, too busy hiding her blush, as her master placed his hand on her head to hear her future subordinates roaring her name. Her hands balled tightly at her sides as she bowed deeper, her body shook unnoticeably and her red eyes glazed over. Naruto's other hand went up and she blinked out the tears when she saw he had her crimson-red half-mask in his hand. You've come so far, Su, Naruto said, his blue eyes dimming down into a warm smile. I'm proud of you. Thank you, sensei. Oh. 9:12 p.m. Senju clan compound. Konoha. Mito Uzumaki tiredly shuffled around her living room, picking up random toys here and there and tossing them into the toy bin she had designated Kushina and Carrot keep their toys. She grumbled under her breath, promising to discipline those girls later. Kushina and Carrot had been at her home a few hours ago and Mito had just woken up from her evening nap to the chaos in her living room. It annoyed her to no end on how messy and disorganized both girls were, but damn it if she didn't love them. Knock knock knock. The old Uzumaki straightened up and turned to the door, her eyes furrowed in confusion. I'm not expecting anyone this night. She held her left side and plodded to the door, feeling weaker and weaker by the minute. She was old and she was holding the Kyuubi without having the blessing of the tailed beast. It was taking a toll on her body. She reached the door and her right hand went up to the knob. She paused. Is something wrong? She asked herself, wondering why she was so reluctant to answer the door. Her thin fingers curled around the knob and tightened. She stared at her hand in silence, trying for the life of her to figure out why she didn't want to open the door. Why did she want to activate her alarm seal? Something was seriously wrong. She couldn't sense any hostile or harmful emotions from the person on the other side of the door, but something was seriously wrong. She jumped as the person on the other side of the door knocked again. Knock knock knock. Mito steeled her eyes and turned the knob, throwing open the door. Orochimaru stood on the other side of the door. Good evening, Lady Mito, he said with a small smile. Can I please have a moment of your time? Chapter 9. Somewhere along the Earth Country Grass Country border. The commander of the Dark Country Black Ops listened to the wind silently, her eyes closed meditatively and her head slightly cocked to the side. Her lips turned down under her full face mask as she heard the revelry in the missing ninja camp unfold through the night. The vampire, wearing a bat mask with red paint instead of black, peered down at the lower-ranked ninjas from above, bent down on a branch of a tall tree overseeing the blips of fire around the fairly large camp. Her black combat gear merged perfectly with the darkness of the forest and only her red eyes shone ominously from the eye holes of her mask, though none of the C-to-be-ranked ninjas saw her. She lifted up a small walkie-talkie up to her mouth and whispered. Position. There was a sharp glint before her as her assistant captain affirmed his position, as well as the other two members of Team 11. There was a low crackle from the radio and then a silent. Team 12 reporting from Camp 4. Team 13 reporting from Camp 5 and 6. Team 14 reporting from Camp 7 and 8. This went on until Black Team 18 confirmed they were in position around Camps 15 and 16 on the Firegrass Country border, thus completing the number of enemy camps. There was fighting going on along the Earth and Stone Country border from 10 separate groups of people, and the remaining 5 warred between Earth and Fire Country, traveling back and forth through Grass Country. Suaki's team, being fortunate enough to be senior to the other teams, were given 3 camps instead of 2. Cleanup teams, report. Commander Bat muttered into her radio. There was only a split second of static before. Cleanup Team 19 reporting from 1 to 10. Cleanup Team 20 reporting from 11 to 15. Their roles, as their team functions implied, were to clean up after the massacre of the preceding teams and ensure that the surroundings weren't out of place. Their role was to remove all trace of Dark Country assassins from the environment so no country or hidden village would know of their involvement. The dead bodies of the ninjas were to be disposed of and only a few misleading bodies would stay back for any other hidden village's ninjas to investigate in. Each camp had about 30 individuals of varying skills and strength, and the Assassins of Darkness were to eliminate each one to the last person without so much as alarming the neighboring camp. Each black team was made up of shinobi that specialized in close to all ninja arts, though a master of only one. Strictly only to be of 4 members per team. No foreigner, Uzumaki or Suna, was allowed entry into the exclusive shinobi force Naruto had established and Suaki led. For example, Team 11 was made up of 4 distinct individuals. First was the deputy captain of the team, Wasp, a long-distance master from the Suzuma Bachi clan that specialized in using the bow and arrow to such a degree that his skill had gotten Suaki's attention, a feat upon itself. His Wasp colony gave him perfect eyesight from close to any angle around him and his ability to merge seamlessly with his environment, so much so that he could scarcely ever be found, far exceeded those of his Suzuma Bachi clan mates that applied. His bow was equipped with tough stingers and tissue-corroding acid that had helped him on the occasion an enemy got too close for comfort. Second was Panda of the Chue Inku clan. The quiet man was a master of Fuinjutsu and also a mid-range fighter, given his clan ability of controlling ink. Suaki had scouted him out in the Ink clan's exclusive black aspirants training ground for when he had smoothly attached 15 cyanide seals on the bodies of 15 dummies in a span of 4 seconds. The vampire commander had kept her eye on the young man's development and had quickly enlisted him into Team 11 once he passed the main black exam. His weapon of choice, when forced into close-range battles, was a tanto. Last was Phoenix of the Kamuri clan. The bronze-skinned smoke user was a master of close and mid-range combat with her bloodline and her hand-to-hand abilities. Suaki had scouted her out during the second entrance training near the Black HQ in the Dark Forest at her unfailing ability to revive herself to almost full tank when the normal limit for the steam engine was 5 times until it became too much. Her regenerative abilities, coupled with her use of virtually any kind of weapon, made her a formidable ally on the field. Phoenix knew many fighting styles. She would have been a better candidate for deputy captain of Team 11 if not for her clumsiness. Team 11 including Suaki was the only team Naruto had named himself, after the spirit animals of their respective clans, or in Wasp's case, his clan's colony. The vampire then gave the respective captains of the individual squads command to direct their people, though still not authorized to strike. She tuned into her team's personal signal. "How many can you take out, Wasp?" "I've got my eyes on 13 of them. Give me half a second and I can double that." The Suzuma Bachi Black Ops answered promptly from his place at the other end of the camp from Suaki's position. He then proceeded to rattle down a list of who he had in his crosshairs. 3 brown hairs, 1 black hair, 2 green eyes, 2 yellow hairs, dark skin, 2 blue skins and 2 bald. It wasn't physically possible for Wasp to manipulate the direction of his arrows, even with the self-made arrows of his, but the man had a special kind of field vision and the quick brain to locate, calculate and utilize surfaces of nearly all kinds and people to afflict as much damage as possible. On one mission in particular, their team had witnessed when Wasp killed 4 people at the same time. The arrow binged off a concrete wall at an angle and skewered 3 more targets on the other side. "Leave that whole side for Wasp." "Hi, Senpai." They collectively answered. "On my signal, clear us a path into the camp, Panda. Phoenix and I will come in and go along the sides till the 3 of us meet in the middle." "Got it, Senpai." The black commander then tuned back into the general signal and said, "This shouldn't take longer than 25 seconds. Leave no one alive," she said, a warning undertone in her hushed voice at the consequence if the assassination exceeded her time limit and if there was so much as a squeak from any camp. The respective teams nodded curtly, silently in various places around their designated gang or missing ninja camps, staring ominously down at the soon-to-be dead people with blank, uncaring eyes. The vampire paused and then said the words that sealed their target's fate. "Move in. Oh 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 ooh. Fire Temple of the Holy Flame. Fire Country." The Fire Country's royal family, especially those currently sitting at the helm of affairs over the whole nation, was steeped in corruption and rot. The daimyo was addicted to gambling, his wife could not parted for longer than half an hour without her spring country and the 2 older siblings were addicted to drugs, often squandering the country's money on purchasing the best high from across the border. Only the 2 youngest children of the Fire Lord were saved from this corrupted family. The older of the 2 became a fire monk and the youngest born, a girl barely 7 years old, had been smuggled out of the capital by her nanny to a safe location where she wouldn't be found, under the coaxing of the monk's son. The monk wanted her to return to the capital to claim the throne when the people of the country became frustrated with how the royal family was blowing through their money and revolted. The girl was seen as the hope for all of Fire Country, as the monk was barred from ruling the country because of his vow of poverty. humility and constant penance. Though the monk did do small menial jobs for the people of the country and helped out in any way he could. Naruto's crystal blue eyes twinkled in the night as he landed on the windowsill of his target, squatting down and looking about into the dark room. He was in black combat gear, including a featureless black flak jacket. Over his face was a full head mask that hid even his vibrant blonde hair. On the white mask was a grinning black maw stretched from cheek to cheek, a ghostly resemblance to what lay underneath. The assassin had on fingerless black gloves on and the soles of his ninja sandals were blaringly white. The eye holes of his mask shone with his eyes, glinting when he found the person A was looking for kneeling before a small shrine, praying. The man was rail thin, his hair was bleached white with stress and his body had a small tremor. Fire monks were expected to not own any property but the clothes on the back, anything that sustained them was offering from believers of the holy flame. So, as expected, the room was too shabby to look at without feeling some sort of guilt. The cobbled walls and floors were weathered and old, there was a tattered brown mat on the ground, a dirty pillow that used to be white that was stuffed with hay and a thin, worn-out blanket neatly folded on the sleeping mat. Naruto's feet soundlessly touched down on the stone floor and the monk was none the wiser. The dark leader wasn't really religious, not much anyway, and he was sure if he slew the monk there and then it would slip from his conscience as any other person would, but the blue-eyed ghost gave the constantly repenting son of the daimyo the benefit of the doubt for all his supposed good deeds. He lifted up his right hand, his pointer finger and thumb jutting out into a finger gun. He pointed his handgun at the back of the monk's head from his place near the window of the starless night sky and muttered. Lightning release, sleep paralysis. ZZZT. A quick, infinitesimally small bolt of electricity shot from the leader's finger and struck the monk in his back. The praying man's muscles tensed tightly, preventing any sort of movement aside from breathing. He couldn't even blink, for his eye muscles were stretched taut, making his eyes bug out in horror. Naruto's feet soundlessly plodded about the poor room in the fire temple and he rolled up the sleeping mat. His sharp eyes caught a scuff mark on a cobblestone underneath the mat, resembling the daily scraping of fingernails on stones to move it aside. His fingers dug into the scuff marks and pulled out the stone, retrieving a journal and mutely, still in a squatting position, flipped it open and began reading the entries of the young monk since the very first day he set out to be a monk. The monk groaned pitifully as he fought to move his unresponsive body. Ooh. ZZZT. Naruto shot 2 more paralysis bolts without looking away from the journal and silenced any more attempts at freedom. Today, Daddy gave Utaburo village to a debtor. The young monk wrote, about 5 years ago. He said that it was because the man cheated in a card game, but I know Daddy isn't good at playing poker. Head monk said I should pray for my family and take all their sins upon my shoulders so that when they pass on, they would at least find some sort of peace on the other side. The writing slurred, then leapt to the other page. Baby Wakono held my finger today, he wrote, referring to the last born. She shouldn't have to be born to such a wretched family. I would do anything to keep her from the rot in our family. The people don't seem happy. Naruto recalled that there was once an issue some days ago. That the Fire Lord gave land to a well-known gang leader but that land was already owned by another gang leader. There was a big fight and the daimyo had to settle with giving the latter gang leader money from the country's reserves. Naruto skipped some pages. Sometimes I think Pharaoh and Karo are dead. They don't talk to me anymore, they just have this glassy look in their eyes. The ghost skipped some pages again. I love my family, I must send Wakono somewhere safe, I must take their sins upon myself. Skip. Daddy won some land from an Iwo warlord. The people don't want to give it to him because the land has gold in it. Daddy's guards aren't listening to him anymore. The gold can bring Fire Country out of Lightning Country's debt. Wakono must not inherit our debt. Naruto raised an eyebrow and turned to the next page. Missing ninjas are cheap to hire as long as they're not Konoha missing ninjas. I had to work for weeks and pay them bit by bit because my vows prevent me from holding any money for long, guard defectors and civilian criminals, gold. The words became almost ineligible rambling. I haven't seen Wakono in months, country in debt, chief monk suspects something, sins on my shoulders, my soul is weak, pure flame give me strength. Naruto turned the journal about, struggling to read the chicken scrawl. They're becoming too many, the fighting is too much, all for gold, I didn't want this, I'm sorry Wakono, sins, flame, I'm sorry, Kami, forgive me. Naruto shook his head and replaced the journal where he found it. Well, he doesn't have any accomplices. He assumed in his mind. He cast an eye on the frozen man, his left hand forming a dragon seal and his right finger gun pointed at the monk again, this time adding his middle finger, the tip quietly fizzling with white lightning. He's not some evil mastermind. I almost feel sorry for you. A painless death is the least Naruto could give him. Lightning release, lightning enlightenment. Sp. Silence. The sounds of the night finally broke into the monk's room. His heart tightened up impossibly, shriveling and squeezing itself as the muscles hardened and tensed, expelling blood out into the veins and arteries. His lungs pulsed once more with air and then they stopped, too taut to suck in air or release it. The monk didn't feel the pain of his heart turning into a brick though, for his brainwaves ceased long before then. The tension in the heart released and the man slumped slightly forward. He died on his knees. Any autopsy would show he died naturally. He was going against his own order for the daimyo's son's death to look like suicide. When news went out that the benevolent, kind monk was dead and that he had died from stress and overworking himself for the muscle tears on his arms and legs, as well as the calluses on his hands would show there would be no one to cushion the effects of the mass neglect of the royal family and there would be a revolt, usurping the family from the throne. They would select a new daimyo to lead them and when young Konoha came out of hiding the chances of them accepting the child to lead them was high. Naruto was going to let history run its course, as long as there was no effect of it on his country and his allies. His right eyebrow twitched and he turned to the door of the dead monk's room, catching a pair of yellow eyes peering at him from the wall. I already know your smell, Naruto said, referring to how he had the newcomer's chakra signature memorized. You're the same person that met Nagato before he came up with that insane idea for global domination. Zetsu remained silent, his eyes narrowed at the infamous ghost. I know, Naruto nodded, turning away from the plant man. That you brainwashed the Fire Country's royal family. And you might also be the one that brainwashed Nagato as well. On the off chance that Zetsu couldn't escape into the earth from Naruto, the chase would still attract attention from the seals around the temple. It would jeopardize the mission. I don't know your end game, stranger, but see this. With his back still to the mysterious watcher, Naruto raised his left hand, his middle and ring finger bent to his palm and his thumb over them, his index and small finger straight, metal horns. Do you know what this means? Zetsu eased out of the wall till his head except the flight wrap was somewhat completely formed. The creature's warbled voice answered. Kurano. Naruto nodded once, his left hand still in the Kurano hand sign. Kurano, next time we meet, you will not be so lucky. Naruto leapt out of the window and disappeared into the night. Zetsu felt a chill run down his back, for both of his halves. He would have to make sure he didn't encounter the ghost again. Ooh. As Naruto's feet took him back home, his mind took him into a memory. Kurano. Naruto's father held up the hand sign to his 5-year-old son. The blonde man was sitting on a ratty chair with a dark green scarf wrapped around his lower face and his dull blonde hair cut short. The boy, a near mirror image of him, had a white handkerchief around his lower face and his longer, wilder yellow hair bobbed as he nodded insistently, trying to maneuver his stubby fingers to copy the gesture of his father. Naruto's reflective blue eyes gazed up at his highly amused father. I've seen Mama doing it before. The loud boy said, though his voice was muffled by his handkerchief. Was that? Kurano is hard to explain. The man admitted. He still went on and explained. Before the creation of our home, Dark Country, the Lord Yin Yang encountered our clan, the Kamuri, and the Suzuma Bachi clan on this land. He taught us how to survive in the harsh terrain and make the place more durable. Sometime later, the Hogo clan emerged from their tunnels, the Gado came out from their caves, the Kurama sailed in from the west, the Chue Inku came in from the east and the Pansa Senshi migrated up from a barren island south of this continent. Lord Yin Yang corralled all the dark animals and contained them in the dark forest. With the help of all the clans, we cleaned the water and we defined our border. The man paused, relaxing his hand and closing his eyes in reflection. Naruto didn't look any less enraptured. Dark Country was officially formed when Lord Yin Yang appointed the royal clan to lead us, before he walked off into the ocean, never to be seen again. There was a short silence for Naruto to digest the quick history of Dark Country. Kurano was, the hand sign Lord Yin Yang used to drive all the dark animals into the dark forest. Other clans adopted its usage long after Lord Yin Yang disappeared to remind us all of our history. Now. The man's blue eyes positively glowed with joy. Now, Kurano is our history. Naruto looked at his hand, shaped into the Kurano hand sign. Kurano is darkness. It is our national pride. It is the heart and soul of our country. It is the stubbornness of our people. It is our unwillingness to accept our fate and die. It is hope for a brighter future. It is our passion for the darkness and all within it. Kurano is our life. The man said, his voice hushed passionately as he leaned down to speak to his son. The fire in his blue eyes ignited something in Naruto's heart. Kurano is a promise. The 5-year-old boy recalled how his mother had used Kurano to quell an argument between a Kamuri clan's mate and a Suzuma Bachi man. A time will come, Naruto, that we will have to flee this country. You will feel lost and hopeless. The man said, sadness leaking into his eyes. But always remember this, he showed the boy the horned hand sign again. We'll give you hope. Naruto's fingers tightened as he looked down at his own Kurano. The sign wasn't blind servitude to the yin-yang user that had created the country or some sort of way to keep the hope for his return alive. No. Kurano was a sign that the people of Dark Country, clan or clanless, shared a home. They shared a past and they shared a future. It could be a way to remind the people that no matter how bad things get, as long as there was life and family, then everything was going to be alright. It could be a promise to an enemy that their spirit couldn't be crushed. Kurano itself held no real power besides being just a hand sign unlike normal hand signs, but it was everything when there was nothing. Naruto experienced the rush of these feelings as he stared at his hand. Promise me, Naruto. When shit hits the fan and we have to run, he grabbed Silent Boy by his shoulders and made him look into his eyes. Blue clashed with blue. Promise me you'll come back home. The next day, the royal clan broke into their home and arrested them. Naruto watched his uncle lose his head. He watched as his father was forced down onto his knees, defiant and stubborn, roaring for his son to close his eyes, but the boy remained unresponsive. For a long time he forgot about Kurano. Then, when his parents were killed by the landmine and his friend's parents too lost their lives, leaving 5 orphan children alone in the world and in the middle of a great war, he remembered. A promise made with Kurano would definitely come to pass. Naruto stopped before the gates of his country, pulled off his right glove and showed it to the guards at the north gate. The Gado man eyed him suspiciously, subtly readying his clay abilities to fight but relaxing somewhat when the masked man showed his citizen tattoo, a special branch of entrance tattoos their leader had assigned the Chue Inku to make specially for Dark Country born and registered citizens. There wasn't any real benefit in the tattoo itself and it couldn't be used to brag because the ink used turned invisible once the need for it had passed. They ran a rolled up scroll with a seal written inside over the tattoo, and when the scroll buzzed, they opened it. The midnight gatekeeper attending to him fell onto his knees almost fast enough to crack the ground. My apologies, Lord Naruto. I didn't recognize you. The rest of the Chunin's comrades heard and rushed out from the building, falling onto their knees before the masked man in a neat row. When Black Operative returned from missions, they weren't to pass the normal gates but through the dark forest and straight into their HQ. Though the leader didn't see himself above going through due process and checking into the country, an imposter could have come in his likeness and the guards would be too flustered to check him in, letting him into the country. Naruto wasn't in the mood to go to the HQ that night, so he pulled off his mask, swiftly putting on his blank black half mask and running a hand through his wild blonde hair. Guys, relax. He noticed that the guard group was made up of Gado and Hogo members and that they wore the country's colors and their clan colors, not that of the Defense Corporation. They were about 9 in number and they were all wide-eyed and fully awake. You're all Defense Corp, right? Hi, leader. Why aren't you in uniform? Naruto asked, hiding the sternness in his voice. Black wore black clothing and gear. It could be anything, as long as it was black and mobility wasn't accidentally or purposely limited. Black shirt, black dress, black skirt, black shorts, black tights, black flak jacket, among others. The police force wore blue and black uniforms and blue flak jackets. The Defense Corps had their own uniform, though Naruto gave leeway for it to vary ever so slightly, and their colors were gray and black. Naruto had run a survey and had found out that uniformity not only bolstered his ninjas to perform better at home and in the field but also made the civilians and the foreigners feel more at ease at the unity and composure of those charged to protect them. There was a general feeling of calmness and ease when a group of people from a sub-organization in Dark Country, wearing uniforms and behaving as they were meant to, entered an environment. The police and the Defense Corps had managed to apprehend more criminals and delinquents due to the cooperation of the citizens, and Naruto himself had seen when, during a routine nighttime patrol of a street in the west, Pansa Senshi region, people had eagerly waved to the police and the DC, took pictures with them and encouraged them to do their best. Naruto didn't extend the order for uniformity in the clothing of his ninjas though, for they already outperformed on duty, and another survey among his ninjas had proven that wearing a uniform on field would be stressful and paint a target on their backs. The leader of the squad promptly answered. Lord Gato had ordered for us not to wear uniforms for this week. He wouldn't tell us why. Naruto was silent for a moment, then his senses stretched out and pinpointed about 40 other DC operatives speckled around their position, when normally there was no more than 20. The 9 at the post was for citizens to see, while the 40 were to remain unseen. They were doing their job of not rousing the attention of the dark citizens perfectly. The leader suspected that Nanako Hogo, the head of the Hogo clan and the Dark Country chief of police, had a bulk of her officers wear mufti while they were out and about, posing as normal people, while the usual number of uniformed officers patrolled as per the norm. Naruto's eyes twinkled. That's okay then. Thank you for your work, guys. Anything new to report? Nothing out of the ordinary, sir. Some Konoha ninjas seeing how far they can go into our territory, late-night river country deliveries of fish and porcelain. Lady Amara Chue Inku, clan head, signed off of the porcelain herself. Some Kiri ninjas were passing by and wanted to stay the night. We processed them accordingly. By the way, sir, he added as an afterthought. Naruto nodded approvingly and motioned for him to go on. The man brought out a clipboard and handed it to his leader, saying, "A family of 3 came in from Chill. We confirmed that they're refugees and they had difficulty traveling down here." Naruto made a mental note to tell Daikiharu Pansa Senshi, the head of the Panther clan and the one Naruto had set in charge of informing refugees of the country, that darkness was peaceful, that any family that wished to move could request for support via a message animal or letter of some sort. Naruto's eyes skimmed the report for just that night, an ordinary night among ordinary nights. A late-night carriage of Uzumaki from Konoha came in. They were 6 in number and politely requested for accommodation. They were willing to pay however much to stay for as long as possible. Naruto looked up with a raised eyebrow. The Gato man went on. "Do not worry, Leader Naruto, I checked all to make sure no Konoha citizen was hiding among them or in their carriage. Then I gave them the booklet on the procedure of how to acquire housing in the country and for how long allied foreigners were allowed to stay. The booklet was given only to those that were visiting Naruto's country for the very first time. He wasn't too worried an enemy or unallied foreigner would get a hold of the booklet because they wouldn't even have access into his country. His defense was fairly tight. The Uzumaki family wished to visit you as soon as you're free. The father said that when they get a good hotel here in the northern region, he would personally go and set an appointment to see you with Lord Orochimaru. Because Naruto's tower still wasn't ready and his temporary office, which doubled up as his suburban home with Suaki, was currently empty. The Kamuri clan was where appointments from foreign delegation and his people who wanted to see him for one reason or the other were set. Some Suna ninjas coming from a mission in Fire Country are spending the night. An Uzumaki man left the country to pack some more of his things in Konoha. A river country family came into the country to celebrate the oldest daughter's 10th birthday. On that part of the report, Naruto saw that the river country family often came back to celebrate the birthdays of their children or any kind of major event. He idly wondered if his country was becoming a must-be location for his allies. The masked man proudly hummed when he was again reminded on how safe Dark Country was now. "And finally you arrived, sir." Naruto appreciated how meticulously detailed the report was. The DC was in charge of internal defense, which included the gates leading into and out of the country. The average shinobi never really had gatekeeper jobs, only missions within and outside the country. The Gato and Hogo clan heads shared power over the DC, split in an even half. Makoto Gato was in charge of the northern region and Nanako Hogo was in charge of the southern region, as well as being the police chief. The two clans were already attuned to working with one another, so there was little if any arguments on jurisdiction and power. The next DC guard rotation will be in 2 hours. Good, good. Naruto gave the man his clipboard back and speculated aloud. I've always wondered, what do you people do when no one comes in or goes out? The subordinates of the current DC squad peered out of the gatekeeper's box. The leader of the squad scratched the back of his head and answered. We play cards, share stories, boring stuff. Naruto's eyes turned up in a smile and he patted the man's shoulder. Well, this job can get tedious at times. Thank you again. It's always an honor protecting our home, sir. The Gato man bowed humbly. Leader Naruto, would you like me to call a carriage for you? It should only take 10 minutes to get here. No, I prefer walking. It's good exercise. But, sir, you just returned from a mission. I barely got a chance to stretch my legs. The Gato man grinned. As expected of Leader Naruto, a mission for him is nothing. There were low calls of agreement from the guard post. The leader chuckled. I didn't mean it like that. Don't allow me to keep you, Leader Naruto. Have a nice night. The Gato man graciously stepped aside and his upper body bent in a slight bow. You too. Ooh. Konoha morgue. The next day. 6:45 a.m. Tsunade emotionlessly stared down at his dead older sister. When he had felt his connection with his sister violently rattle, shaking him out of his bed and forcing his feet to run over the ocean towards Konoha, he thought that there would at least someone there to hold back the oppressor until his arrival. All signs pointed to a Konoha ninja being the culprit. There were obvious signs of struggle. Mito had put up a fight, both against the Konoha ninja and on the debilitating effects the Kyuubi was having on her age. The woman was in no way a trained shinobi, hell, she hadn't even held a kunai until she aided Naruto and his parents escape from darkness, but the woman had refused to go down kicking and screaming. The old cage's lips screwed to the side, a tornado of emotion swelling deep down in his gut and bubbling up through his throat, threatening to spill out and level the whole Hidden Leaf village. He placed a hand on his older sister's peaceful face and closed his eyes, exhaling through his nose and fighting the tears that wanted to flow. The woman was shrouded in a burial kimono, pink, red and white in color with artistic embroidery of waterfalls and quiet animal life over her the material. The kimono hid the chunk of flesh missing from her gut, her upper right arm and her inner left thigh. The Konoha ninja had taken 5 pints of blood from her, siphoned more than half of her chakra and pulled out an incisor and a molar. The work was done shoddily and in a hurry, not with the precision of a trained professional. The quick autopsy said that there could have been a chance that, in her mad struggle for freedom from her attacker, the person had injected her with a clear poison that reduced her bodily defenses and left her without her strength. The poison had long since disappeared from her system. Only one person in the village had that brand of dangerous, undetectable poison. Orochimaru. But the Sannin was with the Sandaime when the attack went down. The snake summoner would later say that as he checked his stash of poisons, a whole file of Silent Killer 43,456 had been stolen from his cabinet in his lab. The attacker, when he was done taking what he wanted, raised an alarm and fled as Senju came to Mito's rescue. The woman could not recall who had attacked her, and as the doctors fought to save her life, she pushed them all away and roared for Kushina to be brought to her. The exchange of the 9-tailed beast lasted 9 hours, 1 hour for each tailed beast shackle seal and 3 hours to ensure that the seal was airtight. Mito died immediately after, some minutes before her younger brother could arrive. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage, tried to imply that there was a good chance that an enemy ninja snuck into the village, posing as a leaf shinobi, and attacked Mito with the aim of collecting DNA for some sort of unknown nefarious purpose. I don't want to hear it, Tsunade said in a quiet voice, his eyes closed and painfully bottling up his rage. The Sandaime, standing behind him, opened his mouth once more to defend his shinobi but closed it quickly when the Uzukage flared his chakra. The two Kage were the only ones in the morgue, specifically the room Mito had reserved for herself on the event of her death. My brother, Naruto, Tsunade whispered, his voice cracking as he tried not to fall onto his knees beside his dear sister. He warned me. My brother warned me, so many times. If you can just give me 1 hour to get to the bottom of this. Be silent. The man spat, hatred and wrath saturated in his strained voice. He bent down and gently placed his forehead on his sister's, remained still for a minute, then he straightened up and slowly pulled over a white sheet over Mito's face. His lips frowned deeply. My error was standing on tradition and on the belief that Konoha needed only a little time to regain its senses. Tsunade had hoped to one day really Uzushio and Konoha once again, after some decades when the Leaf saw the error of their ways. This isn't about the Kyuubi breaking free. This is about my sister, my Mito, being tortured and murdered by one of your own. The old Kage walked up to the younger Kage and stood face to face with him, glaring deep into Hiruzen's soul. The Leaf Kage refused to break eye contact or cede position. I'm taking Kushina with me. She will be staying in Dark Country, where she will be safe. Any Uzumaki anywhere would attest that darkness was their second home. That much was clear with the near-daily migration of redheads out of Konoha and down south to Dark Country. The country of assassins was the place to be, and, with how there was so much silence, close allied cooperation and an overall air of mystery about the Dark Country, it could possibly be among the top 20 safest places on the continent. I will be taking Mito's body with me for a proper burial. Hiruzen sighed. I'm sure you're aware of what will happen once you take the Kyuubi away from Konoha. And I'm sure you're aware of what will happen to Konoha once they poke the wrong country. The stare down between both powerful leaders was electric, charged. The blood contract Torune Uzumaki, Godai Mizukage, and Hashirama Senju, Shodaime Hokage, was that the leaf could keep the Kyuubi Uzushio's spirit animal as long as they did not use the beast to start any wars or use it to oppress any nation or village. The contract would hold strong even if both contract holders died, passing authority to their respective successors, Hashirama's being Hiruzen. It was built on the obligatory trust between cousin clans, the Uzumaki and the Senju. The Uchiha, also cousins with the Uzumaki but brothers with the Senju, were involved by association. If Torune, or any successor, took back the Kyuubi without Konoha's consent, then Torune would die a very agonizing death and his remaining lifespan passed on to the Shodaime, or his successor. The contact would end with his death. His daughter, Tamaki, though not a ninja and not having any fighting skills outside of self-defense, could take the reins of leadership. She had spent years and years in his office, assisting him with diplomacy and politics, and if the question of her physical strength came up, then Naruto could vouch for her that she was plenty strong. After all, the Dark Leader and the Uzukage had watched, while hidden, of course, as Tamaki bench pressed 500 pounds 49 times. There weren't that many Uzumaki that had passed physical limitations and actually bulked up along with their weightlifting abilities, but Tamaki wasn't one of them. The Godai Uzukage had his affairs in order. The only downside was that, even if Tamaki was a long-time widow, Naruto refused a marriage proposal between them. If you step out of Konoha with Kushina, you'll die. I have not given Uzushio permission to take the Kyuubi. And I never will, the Sandaime swore in his mind. If death is the punishment for not listening to good counsel, then so be it. Find out who killed my sister. He snapped his finger and two Uzumaki Jounin entered the room and delicately picked up the dead body. Have a nice life, Hiruzen. One day, Kyuubi will return to Konoha, the Sandaime thought as he watched Torune take his slumbering granddaughter from Tsunade and hand the 7-year-old to a clan mate, not even bothering to spare a lasting look at his remorseful grandniece. The slug sage stepped away from the man as the Uzumaki entourage gradually made their way to the gate. In a hushed voice, Torune dictated his last 2 letters to his assistant as they ambled along the road, passing by silent Konoha ninjas who had long since been awake to watch the cluster of redheads enter their village. The air was saturated in panic that their connection to the Uzumaki clan was well and truly gone, despair that it would never be re-established again, anger that they were taking the Kyuubi from them, resentment to darkness for being the one to take the great beast, and finally wrath. The Godai Uzukage ignored the muted voices, addressing his letter first to his only daughter and last to his only brother. He was going to do the right thing. Even then, as he glanced over his shoulders and looked at the Sandaime, he could see the wheels in his head turning. Plotting. Kushina or not, the Kyuubi will return to Konoha. The third silently vowed. Don't think you won, brat. Chapter 10. Naruto, leader of Dark Country, declared 3 days of national mourning, to grieve the loss of not just the person that had been a main catalyst for Dark Country's freedom but also to the man that had called himself Naruto's brother and a close ally to darkness. Schools were closed. Shops could not be opened. Ongoing projects were paused. The country's borders were closed to all, even allies. All ninjas out of the country were ordered to come back home. Allied citizens already in the country could stay only as long as they maintained silence. The only people permitted out of their homes for extended periods of time were the police and a few key shinobi to guard the borders. The Defense Corps and Black were ordered to remain at their respective homes along with the citizens of the country to observe the mourning. Delivery boys and girls from the Panther clan needed to get special permission from their clan head to move about the country so as to send food and drinks to people that had sent orders to them. Uzushio Gakure had lost a leader. Naruto had lost a brother and a sister. The country hidden in the eddies observed similar 3 days of silence to their Dark Country comrade, though their own allowed the people time to fester in their anger and reflect on their shattered relationship with Konoha. If only Torune had not signed the one-sided blood contract with Hashirama, then the man would have still been alive and Mito too would have still been alive. Tamaki Uzumaki was immediately instated as the Uzukage. Both leaders made sure to keep the cause of Mito's death a close-knit secret, for the sake of both of their countries. When the mourning period elapsed, life continued as usual, though there was a slight dim in everyone's eyes. There was a backup of mission requests that urgently needed attending so as to quickly get the pay. Carriages of clothing materials and ornaments from River Country had to be sorted and accounted for, and the Dark Country National Bank were working on stabilizing the country's ryu given that there was an abrupt 3-day pause on all economic activities. People worked hard to go back to their normal lives but not with the vigor of before. The people of Dark Country mirrored their leader. Oh. Naruto sighed quietly and rubbed his eyes, slouching in his desk chair, over an assortment of documents and files from Kiri. The mist was still on, building a train over the water, connecting darkness and mist. Naruto still didn't see the purpose. He grunted once when he heard a knock on the door. Suaki peeked into the leader's home office in their suburban home. "Good afternoon, sensei." "Hey." The man answered, writing a strong no on the letter to the Mizukage and setting it aside. "Weren't you on a mission?" "I just came back." "Welcome." The man rubbed his eyes again. Suaki's emotionless face took a small dip when she saw the heavy, dark circles around her teacher's eyes. "I think there's some rice in the fridge," he made to stand up. "Let me warm it up for you." She fully entered the room, holding a tin foil-wrapped dish in her hands. "Don't worry. I stopped by the bakery up the street and bought you your favorite pie." She gingerly took off the foil and shuffled forward as her master sat back down again, his tired body leaning forward on his elbows and watching as she cleared a space on his desk before him and placed the pie. "Strawberry and peach pie." The man exhaled and his eyes weakly turned up. "You're too kind, Suaki." "Thank you." She took out a small fork and placed it next to the pie. He stared down at the baked dish with empty blue eyes. During these past 3 days, he felt like he had aged up 50 years, and the compounding aftermath work of the mourning period drove it deeper into his body. The man didn't feel lost by the news of Tsunade and Mito dying like when he separated from his childhood friends. He was just tired. Tired. It seeped into his bones and rot his soul, weakening his mind. He hadn't been able to sleep for the past week. Not from nightmares or remembering the good old days with Tsunade and Mito, not completely, but on reflecting on whether or not it was worth it to resent a village that somehow always found a way to take something from him. No matter how strong he got, Konoha always found a way, some way, to hit him where it hurt. Suaki swept to the other side of his desk and sat down on the arm of his chair, tossing one arm over his shoulder and taking off her half mask with the other, allowing the mask to hang off her neck. The man didn't seem to respond to her action, only looking down at the pie with glassy eyes. "Am I doing anything right, Suaki?" Naruto asked, his shoulders lowering weakly. "What do you mean, sensei?" "I mean, if I had killed Danzo back then, without wasting any time, I would have prevented hundreds of thousands of lives being lost. Yahiko might have still been alive. If I had killed Orochimaru and Tsunade when I had the chance, Mito might have still been alive. Yahiko dying wasn't your fault. He was always out on the field, he could have died at any time. Out of the top 5 Akatsuki members, Yahiko was undoubtedly the most ordinary of the bunch. He didn't have paper jutsu like Konan, no Rinnegan like Nagato, he wasn't an assassin like Naruto or a vampire like Suaki. Yet somehow he managed to keep up with them the best he could, so much so that he was the one they wanted to lead their organization. As for not killing the Sannin, if you had killed them, we would have a war at our hands and more lives would be lost." Her dull voice tinted with emotion and her clear red eyes looked down on her master warmly. "Remember what you told me when our parents died?" Naruto's head looked down and his hands, perched on his desk, closed into light fists. He smiled fondly. "What's the point of living if life doesn't want you to live?" A 6-year-old Suaki asked him one day when she came to from her days, the first of the other friends besides Naruto. "Why won't you allow us to die, Naruto-sensei?" "What did I tell you?" He turned his head to her ever so slightly and chuckled wearily. She raised a single finger, pointed it to the sky, lifted her chin up, puffed out her chest and closed her eyes in a perfect imitation of a young, boisterous, 7-year-old Naruto teaching the impossibly impressionable vampire when she threw the question at her idol. Suaki licked her light red painted lips, cracked a massive, eye-twitchingly white grin and a wild shine in her red eyes. "Everything happens for a reason, Su-tilde," she said loudly, a contrast to her quiet demeanor. "When life pushes you down, you kick its crotch and throw sand in its eyes." Naruto shook his head and rubbed his eyes. "I can't believe I said that." Suaki dropped her hand and looked down at her teacher's brightening, though sleepy, closed-eye smile. She could remember how much his words had invigorated her. It was unarguably, at that point in time, that Suaki decided then until the end of time, she was going to follow Naruto to the ends of the earth. His words, though so shameful that not even ninjas would ever resort to such disgraceful acts, dragged her out of the pits of her despair. For when she was younger and her infatuation with the masked blonde had just begun, She thought of the older darkness refugee as an all-wise and all-knowing human being, but, as she resurfaced from her daze to see him looking after their every need while they laid there, catatonic and unresponsive from shock, asking him the meaning of life and if death wasn't a better option. Naruto became, more so than ever before, the coolest person Suaki had ever known. Her face smoothed over, the frown dropping and the mad look in her eyes clearing off, leaving just an invisible smile on her lips. She slid off the arm of his chair and onto his lap. Her eyes enlarged and she blinked at him. "Was I able to cheer you up, sensei?" The man she called her teacher nodded with a wider smile. "What am I going to do without you, Sue?" The vampire shrugged airily and waved flippantly. "I'm sure you'll get by fine without me." Now, she moved the pie off the desk and onto her lap, turned to the side and stabbing the pie with a small plastic fork. "Open wide. I want to tell you about my mission to Hidden Mountain. It's super boring, so get ready." She wagged a piece of pie before his mask's mouth and the man took off his mask, showing his grotesque, grinning maw. Suaki didn't flinch at the sight, only feeding him the sweet pie and saying, "Well, it was only a retrieval mission. A merchant from Suna wanted us to get back cart from some bandits that had stolen it from him on his way from Chill." Naruto chewed the pie and nodded to her story, finding his left arm around her side. She fed him another small piece. "You see, the Suna merchant said he has a specific route cutting down from Chill, through Spring Country, entering Mountain and then to Waterfall, where he can take his time to Suna. It gets goods to Chill quicker." The vampire rambled on with her story and Naruto listened while he ate. "Oh. Control yourself, sir," Police Officer Emersu pointedly said to the man before. Said man had his arms back, restrained by normal handcuffs, and was leaning back into the brick wall. The man groaned and his head slumped forward. "Yeah, I'm sorry." Emersu looked to her partner, Officer Ugochi, and both turned to the man. "What's wrong, sir? Is there anything we can do to help?" "I've just been feeling down since after the national mourning." Ugochi cleared his throat and said, "We all have. We can all overcome this great loss like we've overcome everything else. Still, public intoxication is not the way to deal with loss, sir," Emersu said. "This is the middle of the day and you're awfully close to a children's park. Thankfully no one got hurt. I'll have to give you a fine." "Again, I'm sorry." The man sighed, turning around for his handcuffs to be removed. He had been behaving rowdily before and had upturned a few tables in a close-by outside restaurant owned by civilians. The police officers had to restrain him so that he calmed down and realized what he was doing. "I'll pay the fine." He collected the small slip of paper, tucked it into his pocket and staggered on his way home, still feeling the effects of Grass Country's very own brand of rice wine. Ugochi looked at his female comrade and shrugged, nodding his head up the road, opposite of where the drunk was heading to. "Come on, we've got one more hour before we can have our break." He tucked his thumbs into the large front pocket of his dark blue police vest and walked on. His partner walked with him with clipped steps, a contemplative expression on her face. "Do you think he got laid off from work? There was even a cotton factory that closed down yesterday." "No, I don't think so. The cotton factory only closed down so that operations could move to a bigger factory in the southeast, seeing as they were currently south of the capital. The old cotton mill is going to be bought by some tech company leader Naruto is funding." Emersu hummed and scratched her chin. "Oh yeah, it was all over this morning's newspaper." She smiled brightly. "My husband thinks leader Naruto's tech investment is a good idea. You know, Kumo is already in the lead when they made those telephones." "Technically, Kumo is richer than darkness," Ugochi supplied reluctantly, not too pleased with the statistics but consoling himself that, with time, Dark Country would lead in all aspects. They have more money to blow on tech and their allies with snow. It's almost inevitable they beat us in making telephones. Emersu waved to a civilian Panther Clan lady pushing a baby carriage up the somewhat slanted road. "Do you need any help, ma'am?" The woman shook her head and smiled appreciatively. "No, thank you, officer." "If you're sure." Emersu and Ugochi sighed, not for the first time today. "Everyone is so sad." "Hi, because leader Naruto hasn't been himself lately." The man answered. Lord Torune and Lady Mito's death really affected him. The two officers were both clanless and had applied into the police academy once they got their chance 7 years ago. Serving and protecting their home in honor of their leader was a dream anyone, clanless or not, had. They didn't get to see their leader often, but the man had made it a point to go round his country every once in a while to check on those charged to protect it. There were about 12 police stations around the country and one HQ in the capital, 2 Defense Corps offices and one HQ in the capital and one Black HQ, no office or station for them, as well as an array of other places that needed Naruto's attention, so it was to be expected that he couldn't always come around. It was with his few visits that they took notice of his carefree attitude. Inspector Jijim wants us to invite leader Naruto and throw him a cheer-up party. Emersu idly reminded her partner as they trekked on down the street. I personally don't think that's a good idea. Ugochi looked at her from the corner of his eyes and the woman shrugged. Why not? Leader Naruto has been through hell already. He must have a way to overcome his depression. You mean, Lady Ketsueki or food? Give him a day or two and he'll be back to his usual self. I'm sure of it. Among the things they discovered about their precious leader was that the man loved eating food. Their leader was very adventurous when it came to eating. He said eating helped him burn off stress. It was bewildering how eating 4 times his weight in food and not gaining any weight whatsoever would help him discard any negative emotions and stress, but it was among the many things they had accepted as one of their wonderful leader's many curious quirks. Changing the subject, Ugochi asked. Have you heard anything about that Uzumaki kid that has the QB? She's staying with Lord Naruto and Lady Ketsueki in the capital. Lady Ketsueki is to register Kushina for the coming semester in the Ninja Academy. Next semester should be in 2 months, I think. 2 months before the end of the year was the period of time parents and guardians registered their wards, then when the next year began school would also begin. You have a kid there, right? Ugochi teetered. Yes. I want him to be in the police force but he wants to be in the DC, where there's more action. The man exhaled heavily. His only child, a boy of 9 years, was about to enter his 2nd year of the school. Sometimes I don't get why my wife encourages him. Emersu smiled patronizingly. I guess I'm lucky that my baby girl wants to be a policewoman, she tittered at her longtime partner's depressed sigh. The Ninja Academy and Civilian Academy were both institutions located in the capital of Dark Country. They were massive structures that used to be royal clan temples, though they had since been renovated to be larger and contain more rooms. On average, each year roughly 40,000 children registered into the Ninja Academy and 30,000 into the Civilian Academy, which was pretty decent given the fact that the last census, which was also the very first census, had placed the population of their country at just under 1 million people. The 2 schools were among the largest buildings in the country, given how many students had to be accommodated, and there was even a hostel for teachers that didn't want to commute all the way from their homes to the school every day. The Dark Country capital itself was a vastly large area that was 60% urbanized, so the megastructures that were the 2 academies were strategically placed somewhat near each other, separated by a distance of close to a mile, on a large stretch of fields, where fresh air rolled through the countryside and the change of the seasons, particularly the harshness of Dark Country winter season, wouldn't be too detrimental to the budding minds. Naruto had created a schedule, with the aid of his civilian and shinobi council, that would be best for the 2 academies. First was that there were going to be 2 halves, or terms, in a semester, lasting 4.5 months each, with only 3 weeks of break given after the end of each term. There was 5 years in the Ninja Academy, the normal starting age being 7 or 8, and for the civilians there was 13 years, the last 3 years being optional. For the civilians, 5 years was for junior students, the next 5 years was for senior classes, where students will pick out a field they wish to specialize in, and the last 3 years was for mastery in their field. They also had the option of coming back for another 3 years to choose another field to specialize and master in. Starting age for Civilian Academy was normally 7. Naruto acknowledged that 13 years in the Civilian Academy would seem much and would scare off children, but he sweetened the deal by making a rule that when students reached the age of 16 and their scores were good, then they could enroll to become apprentices and assistants in the fields they wanted to specialize in, thereby earning a weekly salary. Being a ninja alone was already intimidating enough. Education in the school was already made free and treatment of injured students could be easily handled by the authorities. The money reserve in the country was high enough to pay teachers' salary every month, with some added incentive for exceptional cases. This was to encourage quality teaching in an otherwise free educational environment. The leader and his council had gone in detail in the planning and organizing the school's curriculum, making sure to press into the students' head the expectation the country had for them and the high standard of services they were to render, though at the very same time not cripple them with homework and classes. Teachers were ordered not to leave a student behind and to ensure they critically broke down any subject they taught. Such is the case of any other of their allies. Uzushio, Suna, Kiri and River were allowed entry into the schools, but were barred from attending classes that had to do with Dark Country assassination methods, which was taught in the 3rd to 5th years. The children were smart enough not to divulge those secrets. The headmaster of the civilian academy was a man named Yakusuko Minamoto. The headmaster of the ninja academy was a man by the name of Ginkgo Suzuma Bachi clan head. Both men were highly intellectual and had contributed most in the creation of their respective schools' timetable and curriculum. In a country that raised their supreme leader to the level of a god, eagerly following after the living legend himself as he pushed the whole nation on a path of prosperity and advancement, the students themselves were exceptionally relentless in their studies. One dream, among their many dreams, was to work as closely to their leader as possible, and the best way to do that was to get a good education and become a productive member of the society. They worked to maintain a particular level in their studies. The council recognized the students' dogged efforts and so proposed 2 ideas to their leader. First was a competition that occurred twice a year, where students that applied would display their knowledge and win prizes based on their ranking. Naruto was expected to attend such competitions and present the prizes, or at least every once in a while. In the case of the Ninja Academy, there was a battle tournament and a capture the flag kind of event. The second was an end-of-the-term festival to dispel any tension in the students. There was still plenty to do to develop the Dark Country School, but Naruto and his council had done a lot already to make sure what came out of the respective academies were people willing to contribute to the society. At the moment, both schools were at the end portions of their second-term exams. The 2 months given for parents and guardians to register new students also coupled up as a break for old students second years and upwards. It was going to start the immediate next week. Emersu and Ugochi made their way down the street, rapidly watching the street and idly chatting. Oh. 5th floor of the Dark Country Ninja Academy. Dark Country. Kushina nervously turned her head from side to side, peering into the classrooms. Her eyes glittered with interest as she saw many 13-year-olds writing on booklets. This was the theoretical aspect of their exams. When they were done, the teachers would lead them to their appointed training grounds and examine them. This was the very last class a Dark student attended before graduation, and only very special cases were allowed to skip a few classes before they could graduate. Kushina gushed, attracting a few eyes from her future seniors. Some winked, others smiled, and some ignored her. The class's teacher cleared his throat loudly and the little redhead was dragged away from the door by the white-haired lady. Suaki took the little girl's hand and they plodded down the light blue tiled floor to the office far at the end of the corridor, turned around corners and maneuvering past other classes. Next week is when registration of new students is to commence, Suaki said, her face blank and her voice dull as she looked on ahead, firmly holding Kushina's small hand. But with all the students we expect to enroll, it will be a very busy 2 months. Naruto-sensei didn't want us to cut anyone off in the registration process, so he requested Lord Ginkgo to allow us register you for the school. He will administer the exam and register you himself. Registration month was a stressful, busy time for the teachers and the headmasters of the 2 academies, as they had to carefully file each new student, assess them with a mental assessment examination and predict the best way to deal with them based on their individual results. This was a period of time that there was more work for the teachers than normal, but also twice the normal pay and a 2-week holiday for a stellar job. I want you to be in your best behavior. Okay, Kushina? The girl bobbed her head, mesmerized by the open doors of the offices they passed, of teachers marking exam booklets and a faculty/break room where teachers, Chunin and Jounin alike, rested their aching brains from supervising and reading through exams. Lady Ketsueki? Why couldn't Lord Naruto be here? She might still not have the courage to speak before him, but it didn't stop her from feeling disappointed he wasn't here to induct her into the Dark Country Ninja Academy. Suaki looked down on her with a slightly raised eyebrow. Kushina scuffed her feet as she walked, pouting. He had urgent business to attend to. Like what? She pouted harder. Well, for starters, matters of national security. It was an awfully broad term, but, for a kid, it should be enough. He's still the leader of this country, you know. Yeah, I know. She sulked. The vampire's lips screwed to the side, then she finally said. He might be able to attend the entrance ceremony next year. Really? The Uzumaki asked aloud, batting her eyes up at the impassive vampire. If he's not busy, then sure. I'll take it, she said in a whisper, pumping her fist to her side. Suaki rolled her eyes and they stopped at a red-painted wooden door with a gleaming silver plaque nailed on it. It read Headmaster Ginkgo Suzuma Bachi. The older female sternly looked down at the girl, saying in a lightly stern voice. Remember, behave yourself." She rapped her knuckles on the door and waited. 5 seconds later, they heard a strong voice call them in. The black commander pushed open the door and, nudging Kushina into the office, stepped in herself and closed the door with a muted click. "Ah, yes, Lady Ketsueki. Good afternoon, I hope you're well," Ginkgo Suzuma Bachi said, his deep voice reverberating from his place behind his desk, to the door, where both females stood. He stood up graciously and motioned for them to take a seat. "I'm doing well, thank you, Lord Ginkgo." Suaki moved to the seats before the wide desk, pulling one out for Kushina and delicately setting herself down on the other. Ginkgo sat down. "Pardon our intrusion." No, I've been expecting you." The office was somewhat spacious, enough to accommodate shelves of thick, heavy-looking books, dozens of scrolls and several artifacts and paintings. There were 3 windows allowing in light and fresh air into the cool room, one to their right, the other to their left and the last behind the headmaster of the Ninja Academy. The floor had dark red carpeting and the walls had soothing yellow and black wallpaper. The office was the center of the Ninja Academy, as it had every single record of every single student that had ever walked through the halls, past and present. All categorized and accounted for. Ginkgo Suzuma Bachi was a stately man of average height and build. He wore a jet black suit and black pants with a red suit shirt underneath. Perched on his nose was a thick pair of black sunglasses, shading his Suzumabachi eyes. He was a man with thin gray hair that was neatly combed back, reaching the nape of his neck, and he had a nose that had clearly been broken on numerous occasions, with pale lips that stretched to the side in a smirk, showing his clan-patented serrated wasp teeth. Officially, the man had retired from active shinobi duties so as to better focus on his important job of molding young minds, which was why he was in a suit instead of shinobi gear, but the 49-year-old man was still a vocal part of Naruto's council that had, on more than one occasion, supplied important insight into a baffling topic. The Suzumabachi clan, along with the Kamuri, were the ones to have first lived in Dark Country before it was formally created. The clan of Wasp users had detailed records of every event and as such, along with dominating a handful of the classes in both schools, they mainly oversaw the country's library. Back before the Civil War, Ginkgo and his childhood friend, Yakusuko Minamoto, were intellectual rivals, always competing in one brainy competition after the other. Naruto recognized their minds and gave them command over their respective schools. Ginkgo himself was a well-traveled scholar. He had attended the college of the country when he was young, studied under monks in fire, earth and chill countries, traversed through caves, deserts and forests, and spent a few years on a boat studying sea life. He only returned back to darkness when he received news that his father was dying and he needed to take up the mantle of clan head. He didn't have any conventional ninja training, but his colony was extremely powerful. With his eyes and his wasp colony, Ginkgo did his best by providing strategies to the rebel forces whilst aiding with long-range support. The man's shaded eyes flicked to Kushina. "So, is this the little lady boss Naruto spoke about?" "Hi." Suaki nodded. She looked at Kushina with her lips threatening to turn down. "Greet." Kushina bowed her head. "Good afternoon, Lord Ginkgo." It was her nerves that was making her forget the royal etiquette her mother had hammered into her head. Ginkgo was a clan head and the headmaster of the school she was to spend the next 5 years in. She needed to make a good first impression. "I apologize for not greeting, sir." "It's all right, child. I understand if you're nervous. All new entrants are nervous." "Why are you wearing sunglasses indoors?" The girl blurted out suddenly and Suaki turned to her, her eyes wide in surprise. "Kushina." Ginkgo grinned slightly. "Again, it's fine. She is still a child after all. Curiosity is their trademark." He took off his glasses and Kushina recoiled in her seat at what she saw. His eyes were glassy white with hexagon-shaped panes forming them, tiny, microdots littered his eyes. The man scoffed with a smirk at her reaction to his insect-like eyes. "I've got 180 pupils that allow me to see almost completely around me. We wear glasses because people always panic when they see it." He put on his sunglasses once more. "Now, let us begin your assessment exam." He took out a thin booklet from a drawer on his desk and pushed it to the girl, with a pencil and an eraser. "In an assessment exam, there are no right or wrong answer. The questions in there just give us a look on your personality and how quick you are to absorb information so that my staff will know the best way to teach you. All students are distributed into different classes without any mental discrimination, but the teachers in charge of the classes will be made known of you, what you can do, what we expect you to do and how to best improve what you can do." He laced his fingers before him on the desk and gave the girl a lopsided smile. Did you understand what I just said? Kushina's eyes swirled, reeling from the insect-like orbs he called his eyes and from what he said. UHHM. You'll be fine. He nodded to a small desk in the corner of the room and Suaki led the girl there to take the test. The Suzuma Bachi clan was a curious clan. Not in the sense that they had strict traditions, like the Pantsa Senshi and Hogo, or highly militaristic conduct, like the Kamuri, but because they were even a clan at all. Most species of wasp didn't live in hives or colonies and they certainly never stayed together for long. They were free-living insects. The species of wasp living inside the people of the Suzuma Bachi clan differed greatly to other usual wasps in the sense that they lived together in a close-knit community in a main clan compound north of the continent, with small settlements around the country and a few others straying away from the colony to live by themselves. Their wasps had vicious stingers that could tear through flesh, dig into bone. Evolved wasp colonies could break down tissue and corrode organs. The hives given to them from a young age resided in their chakra core and fed on their blood. More evolved wasps were able to regulate their host's body temperature, blood flow and weed out toxins from their bloodstream. The colonies would provide protection as long as the host had blood. When the blood was too low to be spared, then they could convert their host's chakra to blood and consume. Another logical alternative to not sparing their blood or their chakra was to go on a mission and sick the colony of wasp on their enemies, thereby reaching their weekly blood consumption condition. Though still, one common trait the clan of wasp holders had was that they married and had children outside of their clan if they did decide to marry, that is. Over half of the population of Suzuma Bachi clan members married from outside. Their partners didn't even need to be clanless, like how Ginkgo's wife was a Chue Inku Kunoichi and he had been with her for 20 or so wonderful years. They met on the battlefield and instantly fell in love. Ginkgo bent down to work, sifting through some requests his staff were making that they wished for him to pass on to their leader. Oh. I know you're angry at Konoha, Naruto. Vengefully following Konoha would not only lead to your downfall but the downfall of your people. They will manipulate you and lead you off a cliff. It's consuming you, brother. I don't want that to happen, brother. I want you to live longer than I have. Please, as my last wish, I want you to keep Konoha aside and focus your attention of making your country prosperous. You can create countermeasures against Konoha but leave their destruction to them. They will fall as long as they keep walking on that path. I know you doubt my advice. My infinite wisdom is why Mito is dead and my people in Konoha were in danger. Please, Naruto, trust me. I know you will do the right thing. Whether you choose to take my advice or not, I will still be proud to call you my brother. Take care of my people, brother. I trust you will. You were a peaceful man even till death, weren't you, Tsunade? Naruto mumbled as he folded the letter and stashed it back into his pocket. He ran a frustrated hand through his shaggy blonde hair and grumbled. You're driving me into a wall, buddy. At that moment, Naruto was in the Northern Region's Defense Corp office, strategically situated close to the main northern entrance and exit gate. The building was a large structure that was in plain sight, shining with silver, green, brown and black paint with a big circular signboard at the entrance of the building that had the kanji for the DC drawn on it with black ink. In Dark Country, there was exactly 2 DC branch offices, the North and South, and 1 HQ. The leader was seated in the DC's Northern Region Chief, Makoto Gato. Standing at attention in front of the desk was Shimura Danzo and sitting on a seat before the desk was Makoto, flipping through the thick binder that contained sealed documents and summarized reports from the smoke-possessed Konoha shinobi. After reading the man's overall report on Danzo's operation and on the state of Konohagakure, Naruto had to admit. The leaf is a fucking mess, Makoto murmured in amazement, scanning the binder with bewildered and shocked eyes. Couldn't have said it better myself, Makoto. The leader hummed with a reflective gaze in his crystal blue eyes as he swiveled the seat to the side, his left side bathed in the midday light from the window behind him. What, a fucking mess. If an outsider was to look inwards to the leaf, without having the vital connections Danzo had and the ease of access of a high-ranking ninja, they would see a shinobi village built out of gold and silver, rich with history and steeped with overwhelming strength. The village was wealthy, well-connected in both trade and military, and their ninjas themselves were of exceptional levels. Some Konoha citizens, civilian and ninja alike, would also be deceived into thinking that their village was an impenetrable fortress of magnificent power. Yes, the murder of Mito Uzumaki forced a change in perspective of some key ninjas, but the general notion remained the same. The Hidden Leaf was the strongest hidden village on the continent, both in their military and their accumulated wealth. That was an outsider and some misguided citizen's point of view. The reality was that the village, though looking strong and unbreakable from the outside, was rotten to its very core with the neglect of various sectors, corruption, mismanagement of public funds for useless if not nefarious means, speckled with crumbling buildings, full of people without homes including children aimlessly roaming the streets, riddled with crime and was being battered from all sides by the systematic failure of the council, of which historically the Hokage placed too much trust in, bestowing too much freedom on, while he went about doing other nearly unnecessary functions. Compared to Naruto's country, the council had limited freedom. This meant that the council only had advisory functions to Naruto and no real power, but the members of the council also doubled up as officials in charge of key parts of Dark Country, obviously because the council was both on shinobi and civilian affairs. Any small matter that wouldn't cost too much or affect much could be taken on without Naruto's notice, like squad rotation, importing books into the country's library, buying and selling with River, among others, but major issues must be passed through Naruto, or Suaki, before any action could be taken, at risk of grave punishment to the defector. At one point in time, the council had to take permission from Naruto to enact or implement one thing or the other, but now that the national reserves were peaking on a weekly basis and poverty had been totally eradicated from the country, Naruto gave them some slack to deal with private clan matters and small matters of regional or national interest. The condition being it shouldn't, not even in an infinitesimally small way, upset what has already been achieved. If that was the case, then Naruto was to be notified and asked for permission immediately. Power and authority in Dark Country was extremely centralized. Naruto could honestly say that Dark Country was in a better place than their former oppressor. Naruto shook his head and pinched the bridge of his nose. This is sad. The ghost would have thought his one greatest enemy, Konohagakure no Sato, would at least have its affairs in order. They were the strongest hidden village, for crying out loud. How? I'm confused. Naruto's eyes flicked to Makoto as the man looked up from the damning report. Why isn't that village destroyed yet? Naruto shrugged. Hell if I know. The blonde balanced his right elbow on the armrest of the chair and perched his chin on his fist. There was a rapid surge of crime in the village that could be directly traced back to unemployment, which could also be taken back to the neglect of the council in noticing various job opportunities in the village, like reconstructing buildings damaged or broken from the last war. They certainly had the money to pour into that, at least giving the people something to do for the meanwhile, until they thought of lasting job opportunities for young people. There was an outstanding number of children not in school, or getting some sort of education, centered mostly on orphans and street children. Enrolling into the Konoha Academy cost money, there weren't enough jobs to make money, thus civilian parents couldn't send their children and the vastly underfunded orphanage could do even less. Only children from clans and wealthy civilians had the money to send their kids to school. No wonder the Uzumaki had been leaving in droves ever since Darkness and Whirlpool formally allied. Their alliance with Suna was in tatters, given how the material Suna was buying from Konoha was being bought at a somewhat cheaper price from Darkness. The barrels of oil Darkness refined and sent back to Suna, and the coal they mined, sold to Konoha, was now at the continent's standard price, and this was wearing thin on the merchants that had been profiting from the oil scam. Suna was buying less and less from Konoha. Really, the only thing the steadily prospering Sand Village was getting from Konoha that they couldn't get from Naruto's country was tea, and that too was being grown on the Suna farm. Harvest time was approaching, Naruto reminded himself. Torune saw this whole thing. Naruto suddenly said, bringing Makoto and the possessed man out of their thoughts. He used to have close ties with Konoha, so he knew things that some of the Leaf people continued to deny. Like how much of a bad situation they were in. If I may provide some advice, Lord Naruto. Makoto supplied. Naruto motioned for him to go on, perching his chin on his fist and the elbow on the right armrest. I think giving Konoha more than 1% of our attention is a waste of our time and resources. Border surveillance and spy detection, sure, but... He slapped the binder with the back of his hands and said. This report, things don't look too good for the Leaf. The report didn't just write on how bad things were in Konoha but on the shady dealings of Shimura Danzo. The old war hawk was smuggling drugs from Fire Country to Grass and Earth to make some extra cash that would be funneled into the village's reserves. He was kidnapping orphans from all over the country, and he had plans to expand his kidnapping ring to the rest of the continent, recruiting children to fight for the Leaf in the shadows. He had not less than 4 plans on how to take down Uzushio, 1 main plan, a backup plan and 2 more contingency plans. The man also had past crimes detailed and stored in his underground archives, including what he did to Rain, Iron, Tea, and Tree, what he was currently still doing in Mountain and Chill, and what he planned to do in Iwa and Kumo. Danzo was a very ambitious man, too bad he was more or less dead. I can gather advice from the council, Lord Naruto, but I think I can speak for them by saying that we have better things to do than target a dying village. Naruto tapped his masked chin and thought. That may be so, In the binder was an underground map of roots growing tunnels, including one they had dangerously close to dark country that was away from the notice of Konoha ninjas. These tunnels allowed them to carry out their shadowy operations secretly and quickly. The leader turned the chair around to his demon smoke clone. You'll still be my eyes and ears behind enemy lines. Work with Umara Kurama. Both of you will use your discretion on how to deal with Konoha. Go. The crippled man saluted and marched out of the office. Makoto dropped the binder onto his desk and fully sat forward, facing his leader. You'll make a copy of that and give one to each member of the council. It'll be strictly confidential. To be burnt when they're done reading it. I'll keep this copy in my vault when you're done with it. Already done, sir. Good. Tell them we'll have a council meeting this night. They should be done reading it by then. Makoto glanced at the criminally thick binder, which was half a foot thick and stocked full with sealed documents, scrolls and summarized missions. Naruto looked at the man with his eyes shimmering with laughter. By this night. Okay. Now, your last update said Iwa and Kumo are scouting out our border. Hi, they haven't made any moves yet. Didn't you say they were looking for holes in our defense? That was my assumption, sir. Naruto cocked his head to the side and lifted an eyebrow. Iwa focused their attention on our far northeast border to Fire Country. No success? They've got nothing. We have all our bases covered, sir. Iwa scouting us is understandable, they're just as greedy as Konoha. Remember, during the Civil War, they stole a transport of dark trees from Konoha. I heard it when I was in Ame. They weren't stir-crazy. What about Kumo? As far as I know, they didn't get their hands on any of our resources. Do you think they heard about it from Iwa? It's possible. Naruto scratched his chin. They could have also heard from their allies and non-allies how our mission success rate is near perfect and our product value is among the top 20. If I was the Raikage, I'll be curious as to know how a country, just 7 years after a bloody civil war, was now so prosperous. I'll also want to acquire whatever valuable product they're using to shoot up the shinobi settlement ranking. Naruto leaned on the desk and laced his finger, his eyebrows furrowed thoughtfully. Lastly, I'll feel threatened. Threatened? Makoto echoed questionably. Sure, darkness or its people weren't going about telling the world that they were rapidly developing, but the allies and non-allies unknowingly did so when they resold dark goods or unconsciously advertised dark services. Naruto didn't have any of his citizens in Kumo, Iwa or Spring, as those 3 shinobi settlements were places the leader had blacklisted as no-go areas, so Kumo and Iwa and Spring were severely uninformed of what darkness could do or what it was all about, hearing only from third parties. Dark shinobi had to take extra precautions when it came to those 3 settlements. Why would Kumo be threatened by us? Look at it like this, Naruto began. Our name is now popular enough to be on the lips of our allies and non-allies. We, he emphasized, meaning Naruto and the citizens of darkness, haven't advertised ourselves in any pompous way. We trade, we go on missions and we maintain close relations with our allies. That's as much as the 3 settlements know. Our investment in the Suna farm is coming along nicely, our people outside of the country are thriving, our ninjas bring back profit after profit, and so much more. While on the inside they assume we are growing at a fast rate. As far as they know, the only other place that had free education and healthcare was Kumagakure, but housing, unemployment and crime was still a problem. As long as darkness stays true to its path, we will become something that no nation can sensibly compete with. Naruto pointed to the map of the continent on the wall of the office and said, there would be a monumental shift in power on the continent. Makoto owed an understanding.
I see.
The 5 great ninja villages could become the 6 great ninja villages or, Naruto paused, his pointer finger held up. One major village would drop down from power and give its place to us. The Gado man nodded slowly, his eyes low and his forehead creased as he thought deeply on what his leader was saying. Everyone still sees Konoha as a mega power, Kumo is a close second, Iwa is third, Kiri is fourth and Suna is fifth. And remember, Suna is also changing too, so it might make its way up the ranking. So, with Suna becoming a more tolerable shinobi village and dark country rising in the shadows, Kumo thinks it is the most likely village to have to drop out of the ranking, or at the very least slide backwards. Precisely. Iwa has the most ninjas and Kiri has powerful hunters, so their place on the ranking is almost secured. Kumo, I'm guessing, is self-conscious because it has no bloodline users and no strong network outside of their two main allies. They have the tech, the money and the know-how. Wouldn't it be more logical for Suna to be afraid of the power shift and not Kumo? Naruto nodded. It would be more logical, yes, but I'm also taking into account the past and present rakeage. Ah, of course. The rakeage, see, is notoriously hot-blooded. Naruto commented. He sees a competitor about to make their way into the playing field and he snaps down on them. Why not attack Uzushio then? Uzushio is already a superpower, but it has refused to be ranked. Plus, no sane person would want to anger an entire island of Uzumaki. Now, Kumo is looking for a way to steal info from our country or to destroy it? I'll assume any one of the two. Bring it up in the council meeting. Yes, sir. I'll send a letter to the rakeage to leave my borders alone or we'll send his ninjas back to him in matchboxes. Naruto stood up and swept the other side of the desk, walking towards the door in a rustle of his leader's robe. He placed his wide-brimmed hat on top of his head and Makoto rushed to the door, opening it. I'll leave the distribution of the binder to you. You can count on me, sir. Naruto waved over his shoulder, passing the middle of an assembly of DC ninjas before the man's office. They were a diverse mix of Gado, Hogo, clanless and Chue Inku, with the other clans speckled here and there. Later, the co-head of the DC yelled to his subordinates. Salute the leader. Their legs shifted together from ease to attention, their hands snapped up into sharp salutes and they roared. Lord Leader, sir. Oh. The Konoha Public Library. Konoha. Just the other day, the matron of the orphanage said that he was getting too old to stay there. That there were too many mouths to feed, too little food to feed them and almost inexistent funds to get the food. He was 7. The matron said that he was old enough to fend for himself. He was 8. Even a blind man would see the hatred in the woman's eyes. How she turned a blind eye to the cruel bullying of the other children and how she allowed the boy to wallow in depravity. He saw the hate and anger in the people's eyes too, every time he passed by them on his way to the library. They would curse after him and spit on him. He met Jiraiya of the Sannin while he was reading up on basic Fuinjutsu in the library. The man wanted to take him up as his apprentice. Why don't you hate me, Lord Jiraiya? Because this time I won't let talent slip by me again. The sage answered with a wide grin. Whatever that meant. Lord Jiraiya, why does everyone hate me? Jiraiya's cheesy grin lessened at the dim light in the boy's sky-blue eyes, the aged slouch of his shoulder and back and the dirt laced in his blonde hair. The toad sage placed a gentle hand on the child's thin shoulder and gave the boy a lopsided smile. Your father is a very, very bad man, Minato. Minato Namikaze's eyes widened in shock, that the man beside him knew who his father was. He did. Jiraiya looked away and shook his head, a deep frown on his face. Many bad things to this village. He hurt many families with what he's done. They hate me because of my father? You look so much like him, Minato. The people see him in you. The man removed his comforting hand and sighed sadly. His frankness wasn't lost on the young blonde. Minato's fist slowly curled up into a tight ball and his eyes hardened with anger as Jiraiya rambled, driving the hate for his father deep into his soul. I knew your mother, bless her soul. We were in the same class in the academy, you see. She was such a nice person. Everyone loved her. I also knew your father when he was a kid, but I never thought he'd grow up to become such a disgusting, revolting monster, as to kill, maim and scar innocent, hard-working people. What he did to your mother, the torture she went through in his filthy hands, no one should ever. Who is my father? I'm sorry to be the one to tell this to you, kid. He leaned down and whispered, for the mere mention of the name was taboo in the village. Your father is Naruto, leader of Dark Country. Chapter 11. Kushina liked living with Naruto. It was exciting how hectic and busy he was and how much he wanted to involve her in his day, using any small chance to teach her something new and interesting. He didn't necessarily carry her about the country as he went about his functions, but during breakfast or when they met for lunch and dinner he would show her something cool and task her to replicate it so as for her not to be idle. It always fascinated her on how much attention Naruto gave her every time they had the chance to speak, as if she was the most important person in the world. Her heart broke when she noticed he gave everyone else that sort of deep attention, but she appreciated how much the busy blonde could recall every teed bit of information she gave him over breakfast. Naruto was an incredibly busy man. He could be called away from his home at any point in time. So any chance Kushina could get to sit down and speak to him, she utilized it as best as she could. If there was one thing she didn't like when living with Naruto, was that he shared a bedroom with Suaki. The logic was understandable. Their house in the suburbs had a dining room, a parlor, a kitchen, a front and backyard, and going upstairs there was an attic, 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. Kushina, when she found out there were only 2 rooms in the Dark Leader's house, was under the impression that she and Naruto would share a room and Suaki would sleep by herself. During their first dinner, her face took a permanent tint of red and she could barely eat, not with the steam blowing out of her ears. She found out that the 2 adults would be staying together in a room and she would get her own room, directly across the hall, opposite from Naruto's bedroom, by herself. Her disappointment was palpable. Naruto noticed, of course, though he didn't know the reason, but Suaki had looked down at her with an infuriatingly small smirk and a bright gleam in her red eyes. Kushina didn't like that stone-faced, red-eyed, paper-pale lady was sleeping in the same room, in the same bed, as her crush. She didn't like it one bit. "I'm done using the shower," Kushina called as she opened the door of the bathroom at end of the hallway. She had a big towel around her torso and most of her legs and a smaller towel wrapped around her long red hair. Her bare feet patted down the thick, dark blue carpet to her room. "Okay," Suaki answered as she opened the door to her shared bedroom. She had on a pair of black shorts and a white vest with a purple towel draped over her shoulder, a toothbrush between her lips and her eyes still heavy from sleep. The woman tiredly shuffled on the carpeted floor to the bathroom, passing the towel-clad girl and entering the bathroom. She locked the door after herself. The time was 6 a.m. The house wasn't in the least bit cramped and Naruto could definitely afford a bigger house. The reason he didn't get a bigger house at Kushina's arrival was that he enjoyed the warmth and homeliness the house provided. Suaki and Kushina didn't mind. Naruto had bought a bigger bed for him and his student, a bigger wardrobe and dresser for them, and gave Kushina more freedom on how she wanted to design and organize her room, just as long as it wasn't a mess. Ding dong. "I'll get it," Naruto said and walked out of the room, clad in a pair of black pants that stopped above his ankles, a dark green t-shirt and a pair of white flip-flops, and as ever he was wearing his half mask. His hair was messier than normal from sleep and there were sleep bags under his eyes. His eyes smiled at her and Kushina skittered quickly into his room, flushing dark red at being caught so exposed by her hero. "That should be breakfast." The man ambled down the stairs and walked to the door, opening it. "Hello." On the other side was a boy in his late teens with midnight black hair and dark yellow eyes that were slowly changing from cat-like to normal. A pair of smooth black ears twitched on the top of his head. He was in a purple shirt, black shorts and black sneakers. The shirt had a logo that read Panther Food Delivery. The Pantsa Senshi teen smiled brightly, showing his short fangs and presenting forward a normal-sized scroll with both hands. "Good morning, Lord Naruto. I hope I didn't wake you up." "Nah, I've been awake." Naruto collected the breakfast delivery and dug into his pocket. "That's 500 ryu, right?" The teen's eyes widened and he frantically waved his hands before him. "You don't have to, sir." No, you're here in record time," and he tucked the sealing scroll under his arm and brought out his wallet. "You got my order right. It's only fair." He picked out a few notes and idly said, 6 donuts, green tea, lemon tea, hot chocolate and a dab of honey." Lord Naruto's satisfaction is enough payment. The boy's panther ears twitched from left to right, as if he was afraid of someone finding out that their precious leader had paid for his services. The situation itself was very strange, a customer having to insist on paying the delivery person and adding a nice tip on top. "Please, I insist." He took out 6 100 ryu notes and pushing it into the panicking boy's hand. "Thank you." The panther teen bowed numerous times, grasping the money in lightly trembling hands. "Thank you, sir." Naruto smiled and closed the door as the boy ran back to the Pantsa Senshi clan cafe in the capital. He proceeded into the dining room and placed the scroll on the dining table, marching back up the stairs as Suaki called down to him that she was done bathing. The other day had been very long for both the leader and the black commander, so they were too tired to wake up early and prepare breakfast for the 3 of them. He entered the bathroom as Suaki was rubbing down her white hair in their bedroom. The delivery system worked by messenger eagles. An eagle was sent to the nearest restaurant, which was usually owned by the Panther clan, with a clearly written order of what they wanted. This system was severely flawed because not everyone was near a messenger eagle and only a few of the birds at a time could attend to the orders. This problem of communication could be easily solved with the invention of a telephone, for walkie-talkies were exclusively for ninjas and the police. Naruto didn't allow adding a communication seal to the entrance/citizen seal because it would make the latter seal much too complicated for use. The entrance/citizen seal already had a detailed info on the bearer, that was constantly being updated by the country's records department. The person's name, age, occupation, likes, dislikes, height, weight, everything was recorded on the tattoo seal on the back of their hands. Naruto's inventors were getting close to making telephones. His ninjas had recently come back from a mission to Kumo to steal a simple telephone. No one was the wiser. The idea was not to replicate what the other shinobi settlement had done but to improve it and make it for darkness. Suaki exited her shared bedroom, dressed in her full combat gear including holstered senbon and the like and a black cloak with the dark country emblem on the back draped over her shoulder. She gently knocked on Kushina's door. She opened and her head poked inside. She saw the 7-year-old Uzumaki rummaging through her wardrobe and searching for something to wear for that day. Someone will be coming over to look after you. You're both free to go out and explore the capital, but make sure you don't leave the capital without our permission. Try and enjoy yourself. Kushina looked out of her wardrobe and nodded. If you're in trouble, you know how to contact me. All right. Suaki was about to leave and close the door but said, as if it was an afterthought. Oh, and breakfast is donuts and tea. Because why not? The three of them ate the sugary breakfast together on the dining table, after Suaki set the donuts out on 3 plates, 2 for each person, and their respective tea beside the plates. Green tea for Naruto, lemon for Suaki and chocolate for Kushina. The girl was stuttering through a story of a first encounter she had with Gato boy around her age that had just discovered his clay bloodline. Half of his body was melting off, his face was becoming droopy and he was freaking out like any child in his situation would, until his father arrived at the playground they were on and calmed him down. His father used his own clay release to reform his son's body and promised to teach him how to maintain his abilities. The Gato father of the boy was a jounin in the ninja force, not the DC, and so he used his rank to explain to the stunt silent children and parents that what had happened was normal for any Gato child of age to enter the academy, that it usually happened earlier in life about 4 or 5 years, and that with his son being triggered into activating his clay abilities at age 6 was still a good sign. Naruto, munching on his donut, had to admit, the Gato father had taken command of the situation very well. It wasn't every day that children of bloodline heritage, not only clan children, unexpectedly activated their bloodlines, and in front of so many people nonetheless, which would explain the sheer shock that Kushina used to describe what had happened. I think your babysitter has a Gato teammate, Naruto said aloud, his eyes shifted from Kushina to his student. The vampire nodded. She can take you to the training ground and you can see some of them in action. It's really fascinating. Naruto's friend set down her cup of lemon tea and looked up. That must be her. Ding dong. Kushina turned to Suaki in surprise and Naruto chuckled. She can smell blood and hear hearts from up to a mile away. It's impossible to sneak up on her. Learnt from the best. The white-haired commander said as she pushed away from the table and stood up, walking around the table to the front door. Naruto laughed to himself again. They heard the door opening and a chirpy voice say, "Mornin' Lady Ketsueki. You must be Suzuki. Please come in." Suaki walked back into the dining room and sat back in her seat. The other person to enter the room was a girl in her early teens that had bright red hair styled into a pixie cut, glittering purple eyes and a wide smile. She was in a dark yellow short-sleeved shirt and black ninja pants with a pair of light blue sandals. She had her shuriken and kunai set on the side of each thigh and a deadly-looking katana on her back. Wrapped around her forehead was a dark country forehead protector. The girl marched forward, faced Naruto, snapped into attention and said, "Jinan Suzuki Uzumaki reporting for duty, Leader Naruto." "No need to be so formal, Suzuki." Naruto answered, his sky-blue eyes shining. The Uzumaki teen blushed at the warmth ebbing from the masked man and roughly cleared her throat, discreetly turning her eyes away from the target of so many people's affection, including hers. Naruto motioned to Kushina and said, "I'm sure you know Kushina. Kushina, Suzuki will be the one looking after you for today. Or any day." Suzuki cut in quickly, tucking her hair the side. "I can help any day." She coughed into her fist again as Suaki blankly looked at her, lifting one delicate eyebrow. She shot a hand down to Kushina and said, quickly changing the topic, "You can call me Suzu, Lady Kushina." Kushina is fine. The girl said, shaking Suzu's hand. Nice to meet you. Well, Suzuki, Suaki and I won't be back until late in the night. I hope this doesn't inconvenience you. Oh no, definitely not, Leader Naruto, Suzu insisted. That's good. You two are free to go anywhere, as long as it's within the capital and it's child-friendly, Naruto emphasized strongly. Suzu bobbed her head in compliance. Do you know how to cook? The easy stuff, yes. Naruto motioned for her to go on. Ramen, rice, tomato sauce, fries. That should be okay. We have it all in the kitchen. In case you're both in the mood for anything you can't make, there's a nice restaurant up the street. You can't miss it. The vampire lady said as she finished her tea, picking up her plate and her teacher's. We'll leave the house key with you, but if you lose it, then go to the police station and they'll get the door open for you. Because all doors in the country were seal reinforced to withstand a rampaging rhino and electrocute anyone that tried to forcefully enter who wasn't the owner of the property, the same seal were on windows and pretty much any place that could allow forced entry into the house. Police stations were the only places that had the counterpass seal. The police would check the back of her hand for an entrance or citizen seal, of which Suzuki Uzumaki had the latter, and then would follow through with what she wanted them to do. Also, Naruto said. You're free to show her the training grounds. Got it, anywhere but out of the capital. Suzu nodded. We can hang out tomorrow, Kushina, Naruto said and reached over, ruffling her hair. The girl curled up into herself on contact, holding her hands to herself and closing her eyes tightly. She bobbed her head happily, just barely keeping back from gushing. Naruto huffed as he got to his feet, throwing on his leader's robe and setting his wide-brimmed hat onto his head. We'll be on our way. Take care of yourselves. Suaki hurried after him, saying to the two Uzumaki. Have a nice day. Oh. Not too long after the leader and the black commander left, Suzuki locked the door and both her and her charge began an easy trek down the streets to the nearest training ground. The Jinan had her hands behind her head and she had a lazy slink in her walk. She glanced at Kushina as the girl took in all the buildings neatly arranged and of the large construction work being done in the center of the capital, up the street, which she could see from even there. Cool huh, Suzu said, a smile tugged on her lips. Yeah. The country is way better than it has ever been. Suzuki exhaled, walking with her eyes closed as cool air blew up the street, washing past them. Winter was approaching. How long have you lived here? I was born here, actually. What? Yup. My dad and mom moved here years ago and they had me in the northern region. 14 years ago, the Civil War was still at its hottest but, to Suzu's parents, who had refused to flee the country, her birth was a glimmer of hope to her family. The royal clan were too scared to attack my parents. They weren't in the rebel forces but the royal clan stayed the hell away from them. It must have been hard, the Civil War, I mean. Suzu shrugged. I honestly can't remember much about the war. I was 7 when it ended and my dad spent most of his time teaching me how to control my chakra at the back of our house. All I know is one moment there's a war and then there's not. Suzu then clapped her hands over her red cheeks and looked down. Leader Naruto stayed at our house once. Kushina felt her own cheeks heat up. My dad used to tell me ghost stories, he has so many of them too. Leader Naruto is just so freaking awesome. He's the reason I wanted to be a ninja, you know. Did, Kushina stuttered, poking her fingers together and shyly asking. Did you hear the one of when Lord Naruto arm wrestled a hidden mountain gorilla? Suzu pursed her lips and tapped her chin and thought. Yes, that he was on a personal training mission. I heard that some Chue Inku want to make a manga about him. Ooh, Kushina fluttered at the idea, slowly coming out of her shell. Yeah, but they need Leader's permission first. For obvious reasons. Leader thinks a manga about him is too pretentious, so he didn't allow it. Shoes? He doesn't want to look like a cocky bastard. Suzu clarified. Ah, I get it. That sucks. Suzu laughed. It really does. So, you're a Jinan. I got my Hitate last year. Nakamura-sensei is thinking of sending our team to Kiri for the Chunin exams. Is it hard being a ninja of this country? Suzu lilted and tossed the question back and forth in her mind. Yeah, it's really hard being a dark ninja. We need to spend 5 years in the academy doing beginner's training and after graduation things gets harder by the year, training, missions, non-ally relations during missions, stuff like that. There are so many expectations piled up on our shoulders, so many people look up to us for protection and for help. So many people, our allies included, depend on our strength and our skill. We ninjas of the dark have a particular standard we are expected to maintain, and sometimes people can't measure up and they quit. Then, why am I still a ninja? The older Uzumaki returned her hands to the back of her head and closed her eyes serenely. 'Cause I love this country so damn much and I don't want to see anything bad happen to it. As a ninja, I'm literally placing myself in the way of danger, and it makes me happy to know that every mission I go to, even the minor ones, makes my country that much stronger. What about the people that quit? Don't they love this country? Only a few people quit, not as many as you think, and even still, they do other things that can be equal to what ninjas do. She then went on. They become weaponsmiths, doctors, scientists, electricians, engineers, diplomats, traveling merchants, lots of things. There's even a whole department in the civilian division that reassigns those that quit being ninjas and defense corp operatives but still want to do something super productive for the country and make leader proud. There wasn't a black operative that had quit yet. Suzuki then smiled widely down at the wide-eyed, mystified girl. You'd be surprised by how many people want to make leader proud. Oh. Oh hey. Suzu suddenly said as they passed the wrought iron gates of the capital's training ground. I see someone on my team over there. She grabbed Kushina's hand and skipped towards her teammate, waving. Hey Gonzo, you rotten piece of camel dung, what's up? Oh. Training Ground 6. Konoha. Sometimes Jiraiya wondered what would have happened if he had pressed down harder on Naruto to become his student instead of allowing the future legend to be trained by his snake-summoning teammate. Konoha could have had a powerful ally, hell, 2 powerful allies if he counted Suaki. If only he had twisted Naruto's arm harder, or drew him closer to himself through the boy's student, then maybe history wouldn't flow in its current direction. Konoha wouldn't be without its Uzushio alliance, Suna wouldn't be disregarding Konoha's authority, Dark Country would, once again, be annexed by Fire Country, or better yet, Konoha and all the resources of darkness would be for the leaf. Their world would have been perfect. If only. If only. If only. Not a day goes by that Jiraiya didn't regret not noticing and plucking the future ghost before his teammate. All for a stupid contest. Never again. Fate was giving him a chance to correct his mistakes and rewrite history the way it was meant to happen. Without a shadow of a doubt, Minato Namikaze was a once-in-a-lifetime prodigy. A genius among geniuses. All Jiraiya had to do was point the boy in the right direction and allow the child to run wild. It was scarily like Naruto. Orochimaru merely gave the masked blonde pointers, rammed information and jutsu into his head, set him down on a path and watched his student shoot up into the sky. Naruto wasn't a genius like Minato, but he was no less a terror on the battlefield. For if Hiruzen Sarutobi, the teacher of the legendary Sannin, was called the Kami of Shinobi, Naruto was to be referred to as the Yami of Shinobi. The blonde was already a ghost, but he needed the right catalyst and the right battle to give him yet another fear-inducing name. Hiruzen and the other high-ranking Konoha shinobi didn't want to acknowledge it, but there was a very big possibility that Naruto was still getting stronger. Yami of Shinobi. It sent chills down Jiraiya's spine. Minato could very well be someone that could match Naruto, if only he got the right training from the right person and at the right time. This time, Jiraiya was going to do it right. Minato Namikaze had 2 chakra affinities, water and lightning affinities. Just like Naruto. The latter was more dominant than the former. Just like Naruto. The difference being that while Naruto had 2 bloodlines, lightning release and smoke release, Minato only had the lightning release bloodline. Not like Naruto. Minato didn't have smoke release, and combining his lightning and water didn't result in smoke but rather electrified water, which was lethal to anyone in any dose. At the age of 7, Minato could already separate his chakra and send lightning chakra to specific muscles and tenketsu in his body that could increase his speed by up to normal Chunin speed. For now, Jiraiya focused on training Minato's mind until he entered the academy. The sage recalled the first day the Sandaime trained them, and he threw the same question his sensei asked his teammates. What is your ambition, brat? Minato looked up at him from his book of basic genjutsu, his crystal blue eyes spinning with determination, and his left hand, holding a pencil over a paper pad he was jotting on, tightened. Jiraiya sounded. Well? Is it okay to have 2? Of course. My first ambition is to bring justice to Konoha by killing my father. Jiraiya positively glowed at the words, savoring how the boy grinded his teeth. And your second ambition? I want to become the next Hokage. Oh. Dark Country National Bank. Dark Country. Winter in darkness was horrible. At the end of the year, almost exactly a month and a half before the next year, a snowstorm would roll in from the east, bypassing most of Water Country, flowing over the sea and running over Dark Country, blanketing the nation in thick snow and frigid cold. The weather forecasting team of the country had tracked the storm as it circumvented Water Country in a slim arc and slammed into their country, only making the mist somewhat colder than normal. The snow didn't truly affect Whirlpool Country, but the snow there wasn't very thick, and by the time the snowstorm had passed over darkness and proceeded out of the borders to Fire Country, the cold would have subsided to a faint chill, taking its course northwards and curving back east, like a boomerang, escaping the continent from Lightning Country. The worst of the snowstorm always hit darkness. The weather phenomenon baffled them all, even Naruto. The reason because the storm came from the east of the planet, bent and curved in a smooth arc, smashed through Dark Country at full blast, continued through the continent, gradually slowing down and losing strength, and then finally leaving the continent from the east, almost as if it was returning back to the sender so as to recharge itself. The storm lasted a whole month, and even after it had gone, the snow wouldn't melt until another month, which would seep into the next year. It would result in a forced shutdown of almost all services, including food delivery. Traders and merchants wouldn't be able to travel about or sell their wares, missions leading out of the country became harder to perform, guarding the border was more difficult, and office work and inventing became a home affair. The hospitals needed to be staffed at all times, so medics, doctors and nurses, when their shift was over, were escorted back to their homes by Naruto's ninjas, even as the blizzard was rocking through darkness. Those to take the new shift were summarily guided to the hospital. It was a very busy time for Naruto's ninjas. Wisely, Naruto ordered his people to stock up on food, water and warm clothes for the next 2 months, and in the case of large families blowing through rations unintentionally, then they were permitted to call for emergency supplies. It wasn't that people weren't allowed out of their homes, but obviously no one could or should come out during a snowstorm. The houses had been built sturdily enough and had been triple reinforced by seals to withstand the force of the winds and the weight of the snow. Naruto's ninjas regularly poured salt on main roads and some fairly used paths for those that desperately needed to leave their homes for one reason or the other. Through this all they persevered. Only a handful of people left the country for allied villages for the winter, and only because their health couldn't handle the frigid weather. Naruto was meeting with the director of the Dark Country National Bank, which was also Dark Country's central bank, to discuss on how best to endure the blizzard and how they now fared against it. As you know, my lord, winter is just around the corner. Amara Chue Inku said from behind her desk, sitting forward in the seat and presenting a detailed summary of the country's account. Naruto took the book, sat back, crossed his right ankle on his left knee, and began sifting through the summary. Compared to last year, we have 7 times more in our nation's account, which was an outstanding figure, Naruto commented in his mind as he saw the final result of a whole year of trading and investment written in proud, bold numbers on the very first page. I sent out a notice since the last 3 weeks for families to begin preparation for winter and for traders inside and outside the country to finalize and submit their yearly sales report to the bank for scrutiny. I'm aware, Naruto mumbled, still running through the contents of the book after the written final result. The Dark Bank supporting traders in and out of the country helped lessen the impact of the almost customary first year of loss by investing in their business, as long as it was pitched right and could be seen as foreseeably profitable. Loss was reduced to half a year before profit staggered its way onto their accounts. The Goth Inc. user cleared her throat and went on. I have all the trading reports, she pointed a dainty finger at the book. It's summarized on page 30. Anyway, I've noticed a spike in families and individuals saving more of their personal cash in the bank. Understandable. This bank is the country's safety net. If the economy stumbles or falls, then they'll already have something saved up to keep them afloat until everything stabilizes. The norm in the country was that 10% of every working person's salary, whether they were ninja or civilian, barring teenage apprentices and assistants that were still in school, was sent straight to the bank by the organization they worked in. The 10% deduction was saved in a corner of the worker's account where they couldn't touch or withdraw from, which every working person in the developing nation had: black, DC, police, office worker, scientist, farmer, engineer, and many more, and slowly accumulated with money. When a crisis hit, like a blizzard for example, and their lives were turned upside down from the disaster, then they could rest assured that they could withdraw their emergency savings and also get the assistance from ninjas of the country. If by some unlikely chance a house was knocked down by the storm, then it could be rebuilt as good as new, for free, but the items inside had to be replaced by their own savings. Free education, healthcare, housing and employment opportunities for all eased up the strain on people to have worried too much on where to get the money to replace their valuables. A rich dark citizen merchant got the same treatment as a dark citizen farmer, just as long as they stayed within the law and they were productive. Their salaries and wages could go into food, clothing and secondary needs. The entire reason learning, health and housing was free and of good quality was because of the surge of mission requests from across the continent, their very beneficial trade with river, trading in other countries and their investment in the Suna farm, of which first harvest was approaching. It says here that the electrical company came in for a loan. Hi, Amara nodded. Their engineers came up with an idea to solve the winter blackout situation, but they needed more funding than usual. Their idea has to do with seals and our very own engineering schematics. A gleam entered Naruto's eyes. Impressive. Yes, most of the country's homes and facilities were connected to the Water Board, a national company that was gradually including more and more homes as the months passed by, and the supply of clean water was also attached to the house, meaning it too was free. Electricity too was without a price, but, with how the country had to distribute its funding to other departments and divisions, light on a normal day didn't stay for a whole day. The generator used by the company needed to be refilled with petrol every once in a while, left to cool for an hour or two and then turned on again. Buying another generator was expensive, so Naruto fed money into his inventors and engineers to invent an alternative source of electricity for the country that could stay on all year long. So, with how electricity couldn't be on 24/7, the blizzard somehow found a way into the generator and damaged it. This had happened for 3 consecutive years last year and the 2 years before it, and Naruto had charged his inventors to do something about it. This was one of the things Naruto didn't ask his allies for help with. The only problem I see is for the Suna farm, Amara said. Don't worry about that, Tetsuyo is using some of the loan to build a greenhouse, and even still, the storm won't get far outside of our western border. Because Wind Country was west of darkness and that place was blistering hot almost all year long. Uzushio want to know how they can help through the winter. Tamaki sent me a letter yesterday. Naruto muttered. Her ninjas can come in with emergency rations if we need them. I told her okay, when we need them we'll call. Naruto turned to Suaki, who had been silently listening from a chair by him, and said, Do you want to read this? She glanced down at the book and collected it from her leader. For that moment, she was once again his assistant instead of the Black Commander. Her deputy, Wasp, could handle matters in her stead until she resumed duty. I'm not as good with numbers as Lady Amara, but I'll try my best. You flatter me, Amara said with a tiny smirk to her younger clanmate. Naruto's reasoning behind making the Chue Inku clan head the director of his national bank wasn't only because the Ink clan had been the #1 donator to revitalizing the economy and had also sold a vast number of their paintings to improve the value of their currency. The woman, Amara, and most of her clan, were good at accounting for money. The clan of Fuinjutsu masters had been doing so for centuries, but definitely not before they began doing art. The Suzuma Bachi had been another choice, but Naruto left them to heading the ninja school and a portion of the library to them. His other reason for not appointing a civilian to head the bank instead of a ninja was that other countries or villages that had done so were either being run down by corruption or incompetence. Konoha was the one that first came to mind. If Naruto was being completely honest, history didn't speak too well of civilians controlling money. The only village that Naruto acknowledged was doing well, even with their civilian bank head, was Waterfall. Amara proceeded to remind Naruto that the end of the session festival for the ninja and civilian academies that was to happen in a few days would feature a ballet dance from her clan. The festival for both academies occurred together, deciding on where the venue was dependent on the directors. For this year, the festival was going to be held in the civilian academy, meaning the ninja students would troop over there. The name of the dance was Search for the Mythical Jade Phantasm, and the woman invited Naruto to her clan compound to watch the last practice before the event. Taking Kushina to the Ink clan compound will be a chance to show her Fuinjutsu specialists other than her clan mates, Naruto thought. It would broaden her horizon on what to expect from seal masters. So he accepted. As they rounded up their meeting and Naruto and Suaki were about to proceed to the south of the country to meet with the foreman of the Dark Country fleet of ships, there was another meeting happening somewhere else. The office of the leader of Waterfall. Hidden Waterfall. Waterfall Country. This is your only chance to redeem yourself. An old man spat. Fleeing instead of facing your end like a man, disgraceful. What do you want me to do? Go to darkness and kill the ghost. He should be weaker than the Shodaime Hokage. The waterfall leader spat. Weak enough for you, Kakuzu. Our intel says that the ghost is much weaker during the day than at night, and attacking him in his home territory will limit his movement, dividing his attention between reducing property damage and loss of life. The cage gave a laughing smirk to the impassive green-eyed man. Compared to Hashirama, the ghost is chicken shit. I will not fail. Oh, I know you won't, because if you do, then you will have nothing left in Waterfall. You will be branded as a defector, so that darkness will not turn to us. If you're so scared of them, why do you want me to kill their leader? Isn't it obvious? To get on Konoha's good side again. The man exclaimed. We kill their enemy and they become our trusted allies. We will be invincible. As you say. The green-eyed Jounin shrugged. I'll take my leave. Make sure you don't come back without that brat's head. There is a sizable bounty on it and I'll give you 60% when you return. Of course. That's what Kakuzu fought for, not for family, for he had none, or for his village, because he couldn't care less, but because he loved money. He was the strongest shinobi of Waterfall for the reason that he loved money over anyone and anything. Oh. Capital Southern Region Main Road. Dark Country. Blood looked up to her teacher as they tramped down the side of a wide tarred road. Sensei? The masked man answered as he genially smiled to those that passed them, hastily giving way for them and bowing deeply. I've noticed you don't like using carriages. Walking is a healthier option, Sue. It's good for your bones and for your heart. Besides, we're not in any particular hurry and it's such a nice day. He waved his hand to the light blue sky and the thick, pillowy clouds floating easily high above them. The air is cool and clean and there isn't much foot traffic because people are stocking up for winter. Only some horse-drawn carriages clacked down the tarred road, carrying purchased items and some families that were moving to other regions of the country, including the capital. The riders in the carriage waved happily at them and the duo replied back with polite waves. Walking gives me a chance to exercise. The option of a carriage had been offered to Naruto and, as usual, he declined and opted to walking the few kilometers to the southern region's boating dock. It's been a while since I've been on a good ol' S-class mission where I can stretch my legs and just, run wild. The masked man sighed. I think leading is making me lazy, Sue. Didn't you go on a mission 2 days ago? His student wondered, looking at her teacher with the same emotionless gaze but with a questioning glint in her eyes. That was barely a challenge. Kill a monk? I can send a Jinan team to do it and they'll get it done, he snapped his fingers. Just like that. What about the nature chakra man you sensed? I couldn't jeopardize the mission by giving chase. Well, I personally don't think you're getting lazy, Naruto-sensei. Just because leading a whole country was a full-time job didn't mean Naruto didn't set time aside to do an hour or two of some personal training on the weekend. If you want, we can spar after the meeting with the foreman. I came up with this technique that I'm positive will land on you. Her red eyes burned with determination and her master chuckled, playfully tousling her painstakingly combed white hair. Oh really? Tell me all about it? The woman turned to him with a sharp smirk. No. Aw. We spar, then I'll tell you. She looked back to the path ahead and her hands, hidden under the wide, long sleeve of her dark country ninja cloak, tapped her sides aimlessly. That's not gonna work on me again. The man laughed lightly with his eyes closed, jabbing his student's rib and waggling his eyebrows. Are you sure you don't want to tell me? He poked her side. Huh? He poked again. Huh? He jabbed again. Huh? Sensei, stop. I'm not telling you, Suaki said with finality, a smile just barely wiggling on her red lips. Her cheeks threatened to color at the adoring looks from those passing by, but the vampire maintained composure. She tilted her chin up, walked half a step before her master and refused eye contact with the tittering blonde. Are you sure? Naruto asked slowly. The woman bit her bottom lip and her fists closed tightly, shaking at her sides. Her mind was torn between two sides, the indecision almost showed on her pale face. Sometimes she felt like Naruto knew how much of an effect he had on her, with the way he always teased her, always poked her, always patted her head, always incessantly prodded her for her secret attacks and defense she came up with on her own. This had happened a number of times. She came up with a new move to defeat her teacher. She would make the mistake of telling him before they got to the training ground and then she would ultimately spill the beans and ruin her chance of beating him, or at the very least getting in a single tag. It was technically cheating on his part, because no one could get a rise out of her than her teacher, but it was worth it to hear him praise her intuition after explaining the finer intricacies of her plans and attacks. Ugh. Thinking about the praise made the confident Black Ops Kunoichi stumble once in her step, worrying a few people sitting in carriages. He would pat her head, smile at her and tell her that he was proud of her. Damn it. Her master always had a way to weasel words out of her mouth, leaving her a rattled mess even though he didn't touch her. Hell, the only secret she kept, which she assumed he knew but was denying, was that she loved him. He knew now, but still. A part of her mind wondered if there was anything about her that Naruto didn't know. Soon Naruto chirped with a sparkle in his eyes. His playful voice slithered back into her mind. She cursed herself and slid back to his side, her hands coming up to give a small demonstration. Okay. It goes like this. My lord Naruto. Naruto's head snapped away from his shaking student and looked back to the approaching DC operative. The people walking on his side of the road cleared a path and the man skidded to a halt before them, falling onto a knee. 5 more DC ninjas gave Naruto and Suaki a wide berth to listen to the emergency. He said in a hushed tone. Kakuzu of Waterfall is trying to breach the northern border as we speak. Naruto perked up. What a coincidence. Suaki and I were just talking about how I'm getting lazy. The Hogo man blinked owlishly at his leader, confused. Wah. Tell them to direct Kakuzu somewhere clear, away from the dark forest. I'll be there in a minute. Roger, sir. The man saluted, still confused that their precious commander would think that he was lazy, with all the constant traveling he did around the country. He plucked a walkie-talkie out of a holster and buzzed their leader's orders into it to the team holding the high A-rank ninja back. You can tell me your secret attack later, Sue. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Let's go. Pomf. And they were gone in a small burst of black smoke. Alright guys, that's it for the video. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. As always, the rest of the story is already out over on Patreon, link to that will be in the description. Anyways, until next time, peace.